Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
You have no idea how much I love coming to visit you. Olivia looked at the man who was the director of the orphanage. And you are always welcome to. He had two big bags in his hands. The girl always brought a lot of gifts for the children. Today, she had come to please the kids. I'll go to my favorites, she said, and entered the building. Yes, yes, followed by a man. He had known this girl for a long time. At first, he thought she was strange, but then when he got to know her better, he realized that she was just unhappy. Hi, walked the girl into the group to the kids. Olivia had arrived. They ran to her and hugged her. Sometimes the kids could just pile her on the floor, but that just made it fun. Look what I brought you. She stuck her hands in her pockets, and from there she pulled out palms full of little candies. Hurrah! Cheered the little ones. It was so peaceful and joyful during her time there. The girl even tried to get a job at the institution, but something kept getting in the way. At first, there were no vacancies, and her education was not suitable, but Olivia liked to just come and be with the kids. Olivia, would you like to come in before you leave? The principal stopped by. Okay. She looked at him and smiled. Victor wasn't old, but he couldn't be called young either. Olivia remembered the first time she saw him. He had looked at her like she was crazy, but he, like the others, Olivia didn't pay attention to him. And afterwards, when they got to know each other a little better, the man realized it was just an outlet. Are you going to lunch? Looked at Olivia from her friend. They worked in accounting. No, I can't. I don't have time. She turned away from the monitor. With the whole day ahead of her, Maria didn't want to go alone. Okay, Olivia took another look at the numbers, put her pen on the desk, and got up from her chair. That's good, rejoiced her friend. She wouldn't have to eat alone. They went outside, reached the nearest cafe, and took a table. It's so nice outside, and we have to sit in this office and work, Maria said and looked out the window. Yes, Olivia was thinking about something else. She looked around the room. There were a lot of people who were having lunch, just like the girls. Suddenly, her eyes caught on something. Olivia didn't even realize what it was. When she realized that a young man was looking at her, a few seconds had passed. She looked away, but it was too late. He was heading towards their table. Hello, the guy approached his friends. Hi, Maria stared at him in surprise. Never before had anyone approached them to get acquainted at lunch. Jack. He pulled up another chair and sat down with them at the table. Maria, and this is Olivia, she pointed at her friend. Nice to meet you. The young man looked at the girl. And to us, her friend shifted her gaze to her as well. You looked at me so much that I thought we knew each other, but I couldn't remember where from. So I decided to approach you. He turned to Olivia. I'm sorry, it's just, I was thinking. I got hung up, she blushed. Wow, I'm sitting here, eating, and they have such passion and unnoticeable, Maria said indignantly. It's okay, the friend was very embarrassed. They'll get to know each other, and then they'll get married. It seems that everything happened in front of your eyes and you did not notice anything. Maria sat and talked, but no one listened to her. Why are you looking at me like that? Olivia couldn't stand the young man's gaze any longer. I don't know, you have beautiful eyes, he told her. Thank you. She took a sip of tea, which was the last in the mug, stood up. Are you leaving already? He followed her example and stood up as well. How are we leaving? I haven't finished yet. Maria looked at her plate. Good, finish eating. I'll wait for you outside. Olivia headed for the exit. She realized that the young man wouldn't just leave, so she didn't want to stress him out. But Jack wasn't going to leave her behind. He was following Olivia. Wait, he caught up with her. What else? I think I showed you that I don't want to hang out with you. She looked him in the eye. Why were you looking like that then? He still couldn't find an answer to that question. Look, I have so much work. I'm loaded every day. Just turned around. My brain decided to rest. I thought about it. That's why I stopped looking at you, Olivia explained again. Here, he held out a small piece of paper to her. What's this? She looked at it. My phone number, in case I get lucky and you call. The guy smiled. Here I am. Maria walked out of the place. Bye. Olivia waved goodbye to her new acquaintance. She took his number, but she wasn't going to call him. The girls returned to the office, each doing her own work. How about some tea? Maria suggested after a couple hours. Okay, Olivia agreed. The numbers were flashing in front of her eyes, so she needed a distraction. You want to tell me about it? They sat with cups in their hands. About what? Olivia didn't understand. What did he say to you on the street? Was interested in her friend. Did you like him? Olivia laughed, realizing that there were situations like that. Yeah, she looked away. Okay, here, she handed her Jack's number. That's his number? Maria couldn't believe it. Yes, the girl smiled. She was pleased to do something good for the one who had been around since childhood. But she did not yet know what exactly she had just done. In the evening, the girls went home. They lived together too, because in a foreign city, it was easier to rent an apartment like that. Do you think to call? Maria had held the phone in her hands. I don't know, just meet somewhere away from me. Olivia realized that nothing would work out as long as she was around. I'm not afraid, she said proudly. I am. Olivia laughed back. They ate dinner and went about their business. Maria was going out on the weekends, and they often spent time apart. You're not even going to ask. She stopped at the door. No, why? I'm not interested, she said. Okay, offended Maria was. Yesterday she called Jack, said that she was going to go to the club on Saturday. He got excited, said he wouldn't mind relaxing too. She was so happy, but there was no one to share it with. She was walking down the sidewalk, a song playing in her head that Maria was repeating. She saw Jack waiting for her. Hi. She walked over and gave him a hug. Why are you alone? The young man was confused. Who am I supposed to be with? She realized he was talking about Olivia, but made a silly face. Okay, let's go. He took the girl's hand and they went inside. The young people went to the bar where they ordered their cocktails, and then Maria went to dance. Well, why are you sitting here so sad? She came up to Jack a few times. Just no Oliveronia. He looked at the entrance as if he was waiting for Olivia to go in there now. Why did you agree to come with me then? She didn't understand. I thought you were coming with a friend, he admitted. Why didn't you bring a friend? Maria was chatty after the cocktail. Did you come to dance? He looked at the girl. Yes, she nodded. Here, go and dance. He was already not happy that he agreed. Maria went. Jack looked after her. He wanted to order something else. He turned around and saw that there was a phone on the bar. He looked, and there was a picture of Maria and Olivia on the screen. The young man realized this was his chance. He quickly went into his contacts, found the number he needed, transcribed it, and returned the phone to its place. Maria, he called out to the girl. What? She came in happy. I should probably go, he said, and showed her that she had left her phone behind. Okay, bye. It's boring with you anyway. She went back, where she found some new acquaintances. Jack walked home. His phone was burning his pocket. He wanted to call the girl, but he couldn't do it all at once. A few days passed, and one day Jack decided to do it. He dialed the number and waited for Olivia to answer. Hello, he heard the phone ring. Hi, he was a little worried. Who is this? Was annoyed with the girl. Olivia, didn't you recognize me? It's me, Jack. He realized that they had only talked once. She might not have remembered his voice. Imagine not. It was audible that she had no intention of talking. Look, don't hang up, Jack pleaded with her. Talk. She was ready to hear him out. Why are you being so negative? He didn't understand it. I don't know. At that moment, Olivia thought to herself, what had he done to her that she was doing this to him? Maybe we could get together and talk. He hoped for a positive answer. Okay, just not today, the girl agreed. Olivia hung up the phone. She sat down on the couch and thought about the young man's words. No one in her life she had never communicated with as much as with him. And then the girl thought that it could be because she had caught his eye and not him. But on the other hand, he had come up to them, hadn't he? She decided that as soon as Jack made an appointment with her, she'd take it. Olivia, she heard Maria's voice. Yes, she looked up. I called you 3 times already. Where are you hovering? Her friend sat down next to her. Jack called me. Did you give him my number? Olivia looked at her. No, Maria thought back to when they were together. Where did he get it then? The girl couldn't figure it out. Well, okay, it doesn't matter anymore. What does it say? Was interested in her friend. Calling to meet, Olivia answered. She looked to see what Maria's reaction would be. The girl didn't want to fight with her about some young man. It's okay, he's a bore. She realized why they were looking at her like that. Okay, Olivia agreed then. She was ready to meet the guy. Hi, he called the next day. Hello, Olivia's mind was no longer as Olivera as it had been a few days ago. So, are you ready to talk to me? He rushed their meeting. Okay, let's go out this weekend. She finally gave in. I'm glad to hear that. They said goodbye, and he disconnected. After the call, Olivia's mood rose. I don't understand you, friend. You don't want to see him and talk to him. And then, so happy after talking to Jack, Maria walked next to him. I don't know what's going on, her friend admitted. They came home. Olivia began to think about where the young man would invite her and what she would wear. It was also important what they would talk about. With these thoughts, the girl went to bed. Did you call? Maria asked Saturday morning. No, Olivia checked her phone. Well, I have to go. She was going somewhere in the morning. Okay, bye. Olivia was in the kitchen getting ready for breakfast. Good luck. Her friend sent her a kiss goodbye. No sooner had the door slammed behind her than the phone vibrated. Hello. She picked up the phone. The screen showed the name of the person she was going out with tonight. Wow, there wasn't even a dial tone, he marveled. The phone was just there, she thought. Jack's about to think she couldn't wait for him to call. What are you doing? The man was simply interested. Having breakfast, the girl looked at the scrambled eggs and coffee that were on the table. How I wish I was next to you right now, he said dreamily. Stop it. Olivia never liked this kind of talk. I'll shut up. I was afraid she'd change from grace to anger again. What did you want? She reminded him that he was the one calling. To talk about tonight. In turn, he reminded her that they were meeting tonight. Yes, I remember. Where are we meeting? She wanted to eat and go to the bathroom. Since you and I don't have any places in common yet, let's go to that cafe where we met, he suggested to her. Okay, I'll be there at 6. She waited for him to say bye and let her finally have breakfast. Are you upset? He wasn't going to be. Jack, if I don't have my coffee now, I'm not only going to be upset, I'm going to be angry, Olivia told him directly. I got it. See you later. He hung up. All day long, the girl had been cleaning herself up. First, she took a bath as she wanted, and after that, she made a few masks on her face. The girl sat in front of the mirror. She looked at herself and thought about how to put on makeup today, or better not to do it at all. Olivia stood up and went to the closet. She had allocated so much time to preparations for nothing. There were so many thoughts. In the end, she ended up wearing a simple dress that she would be comfortable in. She looked at her watch. It was still an hour before 6, but Olivia decided to go to that cafe. She would sit there and order something. The place was crowded. Maybe it was because it was a day off and everyone wanted to relax. You're here already? She wasn't expecting it, so she flinched. Yes, she turned around and saw Jack. Sorry to startle you. He took a seat on the chair that was across from her. No, it's okay. I just wasn't expecting you so early. Olivia couldn't seem to calm down. Did you order anything yet? He saw that there was nothing on the table. Not yet, that was true. The waiter hadn't gotten to her yet. That's good, then we'll order together. He was glad. Okay, the waiter finally approached them and served the menu. The young man and girl quickly chose what they wanted to order, sat, and waited for everything to be brought to them. Maybe some wine? The boy dared to suggest. Maybe, Olivia thought, it would relax her. Jack went to the bar himself, not waiting for anyone else to approach them. After everything was on the table, the young man poured wine into glasses. He wanted to drink to the acquaintance with such a beautiful girl. You embarrass me, blushed Olivia. I remember you talking to me differently a while ago. He winked at her. I don't know why I did that. He winked at her. I don't know why I did that. She didn't say what she thought about it. Okay, let's be serious then. In the cafe, I liked you, even very much. He looked at the girl, and he was pleased that she is now with him next to him and not running somewhere else. My eye was on you for a reason. Olivia smiled. Maybe we could try to build a relationship. He took a risk and decided to ask right off the bat. Out of the blue, she hadn't expected such a turn of events. Well, what do you expect? Jack was smiling. Okay, I suggest we just talk first, and then we'll see, Olivia agreed. They sat there until closing time. Jack telling her who he was and where he was from, and Olivia telling him about her life, though it wasn't as interesting as the young man's. "You don't have to see me off," she said when they were outside. Why was that? He wondered, since everything was going so well. "I can call a cab," she looked around. "And I suggest take a walk. Look at how wonderful the weather is." He walked over to her and propped his elbow on her arm. Good. The girl didn't mind spending a few more minutes with him. The streets were practically deserted. The young men walked slowly, talking about what they were just seeing. Olivia noticed that she had walked down this road so many times, but had never noticed that it could be so romantic here. There's an archway that would be interesting to take a picture under, and some lanterns on the other side. "I never realized it was so beautiful," she said out loud what she was thinking. "You're funny," the guy laughed. "Of course, and you are serious," they teased each other. So they reached the house where the girl lived. "I will not ask to visit, or else. There is your friend Maria." He made big eyes. "Why are you like that?" She didn't understand. "Last time when she invited me to the club, I thought she would come with you, so I agreed," he divulged. "Okay, you'll be friends. She's nice," Olivia said and walked out the door. Jack went home too, happy that he made it with her. "So how did it go?" Maria was waiting for her. She was sitting in the kitchen chewing on something. "Great." Olivia had a very good Olivia. "I can see that you're melting." Her friend wanted more details. "We agreed to talk for a while and then decide what to do," she admitted. "I see that you have already decided everything for yourself." Marie became uninterested. She went to the room where she dismantled the couch to go to bed. "And why was I so angry with him then?" Olivia said to herself. She was making the bed too. She didn't want to hear the pink snot her friend was thinking about. That night, Olivia dreamed of her new suitor. She and he were standing under that very archway and looking at each other. In the morning, Olivia was in a beautiful Oliverian state of mind. "Hey, lover, do you want coffee?" shouted a friend from the kitchen. "Yes, now," came the same place. "Well, and how did you sleep?" Maria looked at her neighbor. "Fine, and stop teasing me," she said. Today there was no need to go anywhere, so the friends agreed to spend the whole day at home, finally to do a general cleaning. "Go." Maria nodded to the room where her friend's phone was vibrating and Jack's name was written on the screen. "Thank you," she said, and went to talk to the young man. "Hello," he told her when Olivia picked up the phone. "Good morning." She was glad to hear that voice. "What are you planning to do?" Jack wondered. "Cleaning," the girl admitted honestly. "Do you need my help?" He wanted to meet her for any reason. "Come." The girl was not even going to ask her friend's permission because she knew that Marie and Jack would have to contact. "I'll be there soon," the guy promised. When the doorbell rang, Maria went to open it. She was very surprised to see a huge bouquet at the door. "I take it it's Olivier." She tried to get a glimpse of Jack behind it. "Hey, help me," the guy asked. Now she took the bouquet. They began to choose and try on. 1 second, third. All were beautiful. "No, I can't do this," Olivia said. "Look at this one." The woman brought out another dress. "One is more beautiful than the other." The bride-to-be almost cried. "We've been here for 4 hours. Her friend looked at her watch. "Which one do you like best?" Olivia decided to turn everything over to her friend. "This one," it seemed. Maria just walked over to the dress and poked at the first one that came across. "Okay," she looked at the female consultant. "I don't mind," she shrugged. The purchase was finalized. The dress had to be left to be hemmed. The friends went outside, decided to sit for a while in a cafe. "So, what about the relatives?" Maria remembered what they had talked about before they started to choose dresses. "Oh, I don't want to talk about it." Olivia decided to place an order. "How are you?" Jack welcomed her home. "Good." The dress was picked out, although it took a long time, she admitted to him. The girl had some excitement, but she didn't show it to anyone. Jack brought up the subject of relatives again. "It's hard for me to talk about it," the girl admitted. "Well, but I think that between husband and wife there can be no secrets." He sat down to her and hugged her. "Bring valerian," Olivia asked her husband to be, because she knew she would roar. Now he went to the kitchen, took out the medicine cabinet, and himself was surprised that Olivia did not say anything for so long and carried it in himself. "Thank you." The girl took the vial. poured it into a glass, and looked at Jack. "You ready?" he asked her. "Yes, I'll have to tell you everything at some point." She was on the verge of crying. "Even if it's bad, I won't stop loving you." Jack put his arm around Olivia for support. "When I was born, I had a mom and dad. We had a good life. My parents loved each other. 3 years later, my mom was pregnant again. Everyone was waiting for the baby to come out. I was so excited to finally have a baby sister." Olivia stopped talking, sighing and turning away from the window. "I thought you were going to start telling me that your ancestors were alcoholics, that you had a bad heredity, and all that sort of thing." Jack tried to make a joke, but he realized that it wasn't appropriate. "Mom felt so bad. Yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but she was screaming so hard when she was in the bathroom it was scary. Soon, Dad took her to the hospital, and a few days later, we saw the pink cheap girl that Mom showed us through the window." Olivia smiled at that moment, even though she was a little girl at the time. That moment was imprinted on her mind. "Did something happen to your sister?" Jack was catching up. "No, they were released from the hospital. There were 4 of us in the house now." She looked at the young man. She didn't want to tell him anymore. This was really getting on her nerves. "Okay, if you don't want to, I won't pressure you." There were these realizations going on in the guy's head that it was bad. Now she took a sip of water. Daddy worked at the factory. He'd leave in the morning and come back in the evening, and he'd bring some treats. But one night, Daddy didn't come back. We were little, so we didn't understand anything, but Mommy was crying. Julia was 2 years old at the time, but both she and we comforted Mom when she cried. And then we were left with Aunt Selena for a few days. That was Mom's friend. We liked it at her place, so we didn't even cry. "Did he die?" Jack guessed. "Yes, we realized that years later, and then we used to ask Mommy why everyone had a daddy and we didn't. She'd start crying at those moments, and when we got a little older, we were brought to the cemetery, where my father looked at us from the monument. Tears flowed in rivers." "Why?" Olivia walked out to them and looked at the flowers. "For love." He handed her the bouquet and kissed her. "Mimimi," Maria grimaced. She didn't like the whole showy thing at all. "You love? Take it and take it to the registry office. And what's this?" "Come on, there will be a holiday on your street," hugged her friend. The whole day, the trio cleaned the apartment. Jack took the carpets that were lying here to the street, and there he clapped them. The girls were scrubbing the windows and floors. When everything was finished, Jack suggested a celebration. All together, they went to an outdoor cafe that was in the center of town. "Yes, you're normal, but at first you seemed boring," Maria said as she ate her ice cream. "You too," Jack laughed back. Olivia sat next to him, and he held her hand. From that day on, the young people were always together. Jack would run over to the girls' work in the evening to meet her there. He was always doing surprises for her. "Maria, I need to talk to you." I was sitting in the kitchen with a friend. "About what?" She was cooking something. "Jack and I have been together for 6 months, and I'd like to move in together. Olivia's been wanting to talk about it for years." "Are you suggesting I move out of the apartment?" The girl turned and looked confused. "No, Jack's calling me to his place." She didn't look her in the eye. "Here's one for you." Maria put down the spoon and sat down opposite her friend. "The apartment is paid for 3 months in advance. Live and then somehow you will." Olivia was ashamed that as if she was leaving the one with whom they had been together for so long. "Okay, do what you want." Maria, on the one hand, realized that if it had happened to her, she would have done the same thing. "You won't be offended." Olivia came up to her. "No, it's okay. Just sad." They hugged. In the evening, Jack arrived to pack his beloved's things. He was glad the girls had worked things out amicably. "You haven't thought about answering me yet, have you?" Olivia and Jack were at his apartment. They weren't changing anything today, just being the two of them. "What do you mean?" She lifted her head so she could see her lover. "About the proposal. Jack had proposed a month ago. He bought and given her a ring, but she'd hesitated for some reason. Why the hurry? She didn't understand. "Remember, when I suggested dating, you said the same thing," he reminded her. "Okay, let's do it in the summer." She didn't want to bring it up. Agreed. The guy calmed down when he heard the specific terms. A serious adult life had begun, one that Olivia hadn't had yet. She'd just been friends with young men before, but never moved in together. I want to redecorate a little here, Olivia told Jack. Don't mind, it's all in your hands. If you need anything, just ask. They were young and happy. Hi, Olivia came to work every day in a good mood. Maria was happy for her friend. When do I get to go to your wedding? Her friend had asked that several times. I said summer. Olivia didn't like everyone asking her that. Okay, summer was summer. Her friend didn't bother her anymore. Jack continued to work as well. Now he left the house every day after the delicious breakfast his wife-to-be had prepared for him. He was waiting for the warmth to settle in so that he could start to take care of the wedding. Will Maria help you? He asked when they had already decided on the date. Of course, she was busy sorting out the laundry. Olivia, can I ask you about your relatives? Why you never talk about them? Jack had wanted to ask her that for a long time, but he'd never found the time. And now, just before the wedding, Olivia's having a moment. I don't want to talk about it. She turned away from him. Sweetheart, I don't mind, just tell me, will either of them be at the wedding? He was trying to get the truth out of her by any means necessary. Jack, when the time comes, I'll tell you everything, she cried. With a month left before the celebration, Maria and Olivia went to the store. Again, he asked about relatives. The girl complained to her friend. What about you? They entered the wedding salon. Nothing, as usual, went away from the answer. At this moment, the girls were inside. How beautiful. Maria had already forgotten about what they had just discussed. I feel like I won't choose, Olivia admitted. Why? She didn't understand. If there were 2 or 3 models, and here she waved her hands, pointing at the dresses. Hello, came out a woman who was ready to help. Don't cry, it's all right. The young man pressed her to him. And then some black streak began, Olivia continued, though she spoke with sobs. Will you tell me? It was too late to stop now. Yes, she nodded and took another sip of water. Good, he didn't say anything anymore. He was ready to listen. Mom was working. It was hard for her. She was torn to get us up. We didn't realize it at the time either. When I was 9 and Julia was 5, I wanted to go to an amusement park. My dad had left behind an old car, and my mom had passed her driver's license so she could drive my sister and me everywhere. In the morning, I was hysterical, even though my mom told me that she was very tired and couldn't take us there right now. But I ignored her words, stomping my feet, falling to the floor and roaring. Olivia smirked as she remembered that day. Really? Jack opened his eyes wide. Mom was sick of all of this. She dressed Julia, then told me that we were going to go now. Afterward, the 3 of us walked out of the driveway, got in the car, and drove off. I don't know what happened, but when we were on a busy street, the car skidded so no one would get hurt. My mom pulled over and we hit a pole. Olivia started sobbing so hard that Jack was scared for her. Honey, calm down. He kissed her face, her lips. Julia was screaming because she banged herself so hard, and I was in a stupor because I saw that my mom was lying on the steering wheel with blood on her head. Then the ambulance came, someone else came. We were all taken to the hospital, and from there my sister and I went to an orphanage. Olivia turned to Jack, her eyes searching for some kind of support. Wow, you poor things. He didn't know what else to say. I was in shock, and Julia kept crying and calling for her mom. Psychologists worked with me, and after a year I felt normal, but Julia wouldn't let me near her. She kept saying only one thing when we met, that I was to blame for my mom's death. If I hadn't wanted to go to that park, if I hadn't been hysterical, then we wouldn't have gone anywhere. Olivia was silent as she drank water from a glass, staring at one point in silence. So your childhood was spent in an orphanage, Jack realized. Yes, and my sister never spoke to me until I graduated. When she was a teenager, she yelled such terrible words at me that I couldn't listen to them. When I graduated, I wanted to take her back, but she wouldn't let me. She said she would run away and go back to the orphanage. And when she had a graduation, I found her, but she just closed the doors in front of my nose. Even did not explain anything, a little calmed down girl. And now, was waiting for the young man to continue. And what now? Maria and I, with whom we were brought up together, decided to come here. First we studied, and then we went to work. I didn't see Julia anymore. She put the empty glass on the table. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had such a story. He got up, went to the kitchen, and refilled the glass. It's all right, but I talked it out. Now I have no secrets from you. She put her head on his chest. Everything will be fine. Time heals when it passes. Then Julia will realize that he has no one more dear than you. He tried to find some words for support, but he failed. It's okay, Olivia assured him. She went into the bathroom to wash her face. Jack tried not to touch the subject of family again. He only had an elderly mother, whom he loved and appreciated very much. Time passed quickly. Olivia took a vacation at work, so that the wedding was held without any fuss. They invited acquaintances. Maria became a witness, which she was very happy about. Are you excited? They woke up in the morning. Jack asked the one who was to become his wife today. No, the girl said confidently. Good, then get ready. He went to the kitchen. Olivia had to go to Maria's house that day, and she was still living in the apartment they'd rented together. Jack was planning to buy her out of it. Everything went perfectly. The young people were not long in the registry office, and then they went to the dining room, where the celebration was to take place. Why didn't I say yes before? Olivia laughed. She was the queen of the evening. And I told you so, he kissed her. Since Olivia was on vacation, Jack was also released for a few days. They decided to go on vacation. With the tickets in hand, they packed their bags and went to the train station. The vacation was good for them. They both came back fresh and ready to start work with new strength. Olivia, what's this? Jack saw the pregnancy test in the morning. Come here, she called to her husband. Now he put everything down and walked over to her. You know, to be honest, I was hoping we'd change climates and get pregnant. She hugged Jack and said in his ear. Why whisper? He wondered. I'm afraid to jinx it, and it was true. Don't worry, we still have a long way to go. He kissed her as usual. Olivia really wanted a child. She imagined how she would babysit it, walk with a stroller and everything else. The girl didn't tell anyone about her dream. She cherished it inside her. How are you doing? Maria often asked her. Everything is fine, but I can't manage to have children, Olivia said sadly. It was only a year after the wedding. Don't worry, everything will work out, her friend assured her. I believe it, the girl looked at her. You know, don't you want to go to your grandmother's? Maria asked me once. What grandmother? Olivia didn't understand her. Well, who will tell you what will be and was, wondered the girlfriend. They used to talk about it a lot. I don't know, before they were young, so it was interesting, but now the girl was afraid to find out something bad. If you think about it, tell me, I recognized one. A very kind grandmother knows a lot, said Maria. Good, Olivia thought, that would never happen. Days passed, but the long-awaited pregnancy never came. Okay, let's go to your grandmother, came Olivia to Maria's house. What's the matter? She'd already forgotten about this conversation. I don't know. Some kind of despair. Jack's not talking, but I think he's thinking about it too. The girl almost cried. Well, wait, we have to call to make arrangements, Maria said. She went to the room, took out a notebook where she had everything written down. She looked at it for a long time and then came back. Well? Her friend looked at her. You know, there is no phone here, only an address. Maria showed her notes. Okay, then let's go, Olivia was determined. The girls called a cab. They went outside and waited for the car there. At that moment, Olivia's phone rang. Hello, love, she saw it was her husband. Where are you? He kept calling and asking this. No, not controlling. He just wanted to know. We're with Maria. She didn't bother to deceive. Okay, when are you coming home? Jack asked. Tonight. Olivia didn't know that for sure, so she answered vaguely. Okay. Kisses, he hummed up. How does it feel? Maria turned to her. Yeah, Olivia saw their car pull up. They got in, gave the driver the address, drove off. He looked at them through the mirror. Yeah, my grandmother lives there, Maria lied to him, so he wouldn't think anything of it. They drove for a long time, about 40 minutes, but the friends didn't notice it. All the way they chatted about work, life, and Maria's boyfriends. Maybe I'll go to her too, the girl said. Suit yourself, Olivia shrugged. It's a bit out of the way, the driver said when they stopped. Thank you, Maria paid him back. Have a nice day, he drove off. Olivia and Maria stood looking around. Apparently there had once been a village here, but now there was nothing left. We should have found the grandmother first and then let the car go, Olivia said. She was already feeling a little sorry. There was something creepy about coming here. There were tree roots sticking up here and there, tall grass. Come on, let's go. She saw a ramshackle hut off to the side. And how did you just notice it? Her friend turned to follow her. Maria had almost reached the gate. She tried to open them, pushed, the door creaked open. Hello, shouted the girl, but no one answered her. Maria, are you sure there's someone here? Olivia was getting more and more scared. She realized that soon it would be dark, and the cab would not come. Look, I wrote this address down a long time ago. I don't know, she turned to the girl. What do you want? The friends shrieked when they heard a hoarse and loud voice. Why so frightening? They saw a woman standing in front of them. She was old, but sturdy. What do you want? Repeated her question. We come to see you, to see your fate. Maria did not know how to say it. Come in, the woman pointed to the door of the house. And why is there no one else here? The girls saw that there were no more houses on the street. Afraid, simply answered the lady of the house. Hey! The girls looked at each other. They went inside. It was clean. From the outside, the house was low and small, but inside it seemed to be big. You to the room, grandmother showed Marie, and you to here. She sat Olivia down on a chair. After that, grandma spread the cards out on the table and looked at them for a long time. You won't even ask me anything? The girl was surprised. Sit down and be quiet, she shouted at her. All right, she was silent. Oh girl, it's all black at you, not a single bright spot in the past. Somebody's holding a grudge. That's what's causing all the trouble, the woman said. Yes, Olivia nodded, at which point the woman across from her put her finger to her lips. You want a baby, you can't have a baby. She shook her head negatively. How? The girl even jumped up from her seat, because that was the only reason she had come here. Sit down, the witch doctor stomped her foot. I won't sit down. I don't believe you. She went into the room after Maria. The blackness is in you. You need to cleanse yourself, the woman said in her back. Maria, call a cab. Let's go home. She was already dragging her friend back. Happiness will come if you get rid of the blackness, still said the grandmother calm, but loud voice. Yes, let go. Maria broke free from her friend's clinging fingers. Sorry, she was crying. What happened? They stood waiting for the car. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Olivia almost shouted. Calm down. Her friend didn't know how to bring her to her senses. Why did you bring me here? She yelled. You came to me yourself. Enough time had passed and they saw the car coming. In order not to make it to them, the girls walked to it. Sorry, Olivia sat crying in the back seat. She didn't want to say anything to anyone. You're welcome. Maria took offense to it too, which was her fault. They made it to town, the girls, each being driven home. Were you crying? Jack met Olivia on the doorstep. I don't want to talk right now. She walked to the bathroom. Understood, did not pester her husband. The girl was there for a long time. When she came out, the husband was already in the bedroom. Are you going to sleep? He asked her. Yes, now. She had already calmed down. Olivia came into the bedroom, lay on the edge of the bed, and turned away from her husband. Why don't you tell me what happened? Jack wanted to know. Not tonight. She was on the verge of crying again. As you wish, Jack realized that he couldn't get anything out of Olivia today. He turned off the lamp and closed his eyes. And his wife lay there, everything in her head sounding like something black in her system. Blackness, blackness, blackness. That word wouldn't get out of her head. It wouldn't work. She had a dream where a little girl was reaching for her. Blackness. There was darkness after that. Olivia jumped up in bed. What's wrong? Jack woke up too. Nothing, just a nightmare. She realized she had cried in her sleep. Come to me, he hugged his wife. She lay more until morning, still unable to sleep. What's the matter with you? Maria saw her in the morning at work. Everything is normal. The girl was pale as a wall, under the eyes dark circles. I can see that something is wrong with you, tuned her friend. No bother, Olivia sat back in her seat. Okay, I won't. Maria returned to the table. Olivia's day was falling apart. She couldn't do anything. When she went to turn in the report, it turned out that half of it had been miscounted. She stood in front of her boss and stared at her. "Olivia, aren't you feeling well?" she asked her. "No, I'm fine." She realized that she had been standing there silent for several minutes. "Listen, I think you should take a sick day and get checked out," the woman advised her. "Thank you, I'm really fine." She gathered up her papers and got ready to go to her room. "Wait," her boss got up and approached her. "What?" Olivia turned around. Olivia, that you spent a few days at home." She was worried about her employees. The woman saw that the always cheerful and agile girl now looked sick. "Okay, thank you." She thanked her again and left the office. She was home again. She did not want to eat or drink, and the words of the old woman from the village did not come out of her head. "What are you sitting here for?" Jack came home and found his wife sitting on the windowsill behind the curtain. "I'm not well. She's crying." "What's the pain? An ambulance?" He misunderstood her. "No, my soul hurts." She put her hand on her chest. Scared, "Tell me where you were yesterday and what happened." The man realized that everything started exactly a day ago. "Maria and I went to the witch doctor." Olivia was ashamed of this act. She did not want to say anything. "What did she tell you?" He didn't believe it. "It's bad," his wife cried. "It's okay," he hugged her. She said, "We can't have children." She kept crying. "You believe some grandmother? Let's go to the hospital. Let's get checked out." He's been talking her into it for a long time. "Okay, but not now. I need to go away for a while," she asked him. It was a deal, and they sat hugging each other. Olivia began to come to her senses. She believed her husband's words, that her grandmother had said all sorts of things. A month had passed since that day, and the girl had almost forgotten everything. Now she was the same as before. "Well, are you ready to go to the doctor?" her husband asked her. No, she was afraid of the final verdict. "Okay, we wait further," was patient Jack. He continued to love his Olivienka more than anything else in the world. He and Maria were only in contact at work now, because the relationship had soured because of that trip. Olivia was under the impression that her friend had talked her into going to that village on purpose. "Hey," she came to work. "Hello," her friend felt like they were drifting apart. "How are things going on the personal front?" Olivia asked the girl. "Same as always," she shrugged. "And why do you still have no one?" Olivia wondered. "I wouldn't know about that." She wouldn't mind if someone came to meet her. "Well, forget it." I didn't want to bring up a painful question for Maria. Some more time passed. Olivia came home. She had bought so many products. She wanted to make her husband a delicious dinner. The girl took the chicken out of the bag. She wanted to rinse it with water, but as soon as she took it, she felt sick. She dropped everything and ran to the bathroom. "What's going on in here?" Jack came into the apartment. "You're not gonna believe this." She pulled out the strip he already knew from behind her back. "Pregnancy." He stared at her. Yes, Olivia was so excited about it that everything was trembling inside. But the girl knew she couldn't do that, because it wasn't exactly clear yet. She had to go to the doctor. "I can't believe it, love." He put his arms around her and kissed her. Quietly, she put her finger to her lips. After that, they went into the kitchen together, Jack chopping and cutting and tasting everything, while Olivia marinated and baked. It was so idyllic between them. The wife looked at her husband and thought that now they were going to have everything the way she had always imagined. "Sweetheart, maybe we should watch a movie," Jack asked in the evening. Come on, it had been a long time since they'd had a romantic evening like this. A movie they had watched when they were still just friends was chosen, memories that made their hearts warm now. The next day, Olivia excused herself from work. She needed to go to the doctor. Of course, she didn't say anything to anyone. Even Maria didn't know that her friend was expecting a baby. The girl walked down the street and thought to herself that she said, the witch doctor was wrong. "Hello, I have an appointment." She came to the gynecological office. "Come in," the woman showed her her hand. She entered the office with an easy gait, sat down at the doctor's desk. "What are you complaining about?" The woman looked up at her. Here, she put a test with 2 red stripes on the table. "Come in, let's have a look." She pointed to the screen. Okay, Olivia knew it had to be okay. The doctor walked over to her. She was doing her job. Olivia saw that she was frowning. Was something wrong? The patient tensed up. "I don't know, I need an in-depth physical," she said, and wrote something on her chart. Thank you, goodbye. The girl left the office with a card and a lot of papers in her hands. There were referrals for tests and other doctors. After that, Olivia went home. She wanted to look at everything and read. At home, she felt dizzy and laid down on the bed until her husband came. So, what did the doctor say? Jack came into the apartment. He sent her for tests, she said. That's good. You'll check your health at the same time. He leaned over and kissed her. The next day, from the very morning, the girl was again in the hospital. She brought the tests and now stood in line for blood. There were a lot of people around, talking about something. Olivia stood listening to all this for a long time. At some point, because of the heat or something else affected her, she just fainted. Everyone in the hallway whispered, started talking, called the doctor. Olivia was lifted up and put on a couch in the office. So what do we have here? The man in the white coat took the girl's papers. What's wrong with me? Olivia woke up at that moment, dizzy and nauseous. I see, you're expecting a baby, he looked at her. Yeah, she couldn't focus her eyes. They didn't lift her off the couch. They drew blood right there. Lie down until you feel better and then you can go, the medic said. Thank you, she still couldn't recover. Olivia doubted that she would be able to get home, so she called Jack to pick her up. He came quickly. He was agitated. What happened? They were walking outside to the car. It's okay. She just got a little sick. She was stumbling around. We'll get home now. It'll get easier there. You can lie down. He was very caring. They arrived. Jack put his wife on the bed, poured water, thoughtfully, so that she would not get up. The girl lay until evening. She did not feel better, but she wrote it all off to pregnancy, remembered how bad her mother was. So how are you? Her husband came in the evening. Still the same, she looked at him. So tomorrow we go to the hospital. You lie down for preservation and no objections, the man said firmly. I agree, Olivia thought. That's where she would have all the other procedures done. She called her boss, told her everything, and she realized that Olivia was going on sick leave from tomorrow. I don't want to scare you, but the tests came back and they're not good. The doctor came to see her. What's wrong with it? The girl is tense. I don't know yet, but we're checking, the doctor said. After that, Olivia was taken to different rooms, ultrasound, blood again, and some other machines. She was so exhausted, she didn't understand why everything was going wrong. We'll have to terminate the pregnancy, the doctor said after a month. What? That's out of the question. Olivia was still in the hospital. Can you bring your husband in to make this decision together? She tuned out. Okay. The girl picked up the phone. She was sure whatever the outcome, Jack wouldn't agree to an abortion. The husband was at work, but after his wife's call, he quickly arrived at the hospital. What happened again? She looked at the crying girl. Come on, she led him to the doctor's office. There she repeated what she had told Olivia. But that was not all. She looked at the man's face, which was graying before her eyes. Why? He muttered lifelessly. Your wife has a tumor with such a condition. If we make it to delivery, she won't live long. The woman was frank. How can that be? The man was crying now too. We double-checked several times before telling you. She put the documents in front of them. I can't believe it. Looked through some records Jack didn't understand anything about. Take my word for it, the woman sighed. It was late when he got home, and it was as if something had died in him. He knew he had to save his wife, so he agreed to terminate the pregnancy. The operation was scheduled for the next day. At night, Olivia dreamed of that little girl again, reaching out to her. It won't work. It won't work. She heard the old woman's words, and again the tears, the hysteria. Why? She jumped up. It's okay, her roommate told her. Yes, Olivia said aloud, and thought to herself that everyone else was fine, but not her. She lay on the bed with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was like an execution for her. She wished with all her heart that this child would come into the world. Let's go. The nurse came in behind her. Now tears covered her eyes. The girl could not see where she was going. After that, anesthesia and darkness. And the little girl kept reaching for her. Get me out of here, Olivia called to Jack when it was over. Okay, he packed up and drove. The unwed parents were heartbroken, but there was no letting up right now. Olivia had so many treatments prescribed that she realized she wouldn't be able to go to work for a long time. You want to drive yourself, or should I drive you? Jack asked her this morning. She didn't want anyone else around right now. The girl went to another clinic where they looked at all her tests and scans and prescribed treatment. Olivia, hello, Maria called her a couple months later. Hello. So she welcomed her a long time ago. How are you doing? Maybe we can meet up? A friend asked. Come if you want. The condition and appearance did not allow Olivia to leave the house. Okay, then wait for her in the evening, promised Maria to come. When the doors were opened to her, she stood looking at her friend for a long time. She was wearing a shawl and very thin. What happened? Did not understand the girl. Come in, Olivia invited her in. They went to the kitchen where she told Marie everything. She just sat there and groaned. How could it be? Cried her friend. This is life. Tears rolled from Olivia's eyes as well. They sat like that for about an hour. Say, do you need any help? The guest inquired. No, she shook her head. Jack is my main helper. Well, if you need anything, then call me. The girl was ready to help at any time. Thank you. They hugged each other as Maria left the house. The treatment continued, but the chemotherapy didn't help. They needed surgery. Olivia thought about it for a long time and finally agreed. Everything was taking a long time, so if Jack didn't come to the hospital, he was at home waiting for his wife to call him. The doctor called him and said that his wife was still under anesthesia, but that the operation had been a success. She was constantly being taken for checkups, tests, and other procedures. But the most important thing that worried the girl now was that the main organ inside her was no longer there. It had been removed so as not to risk it. And that meant that she would never have children again. Maria, can I come to you? Olivia was discharged from the hospital. She didn't want to go home. Of course, her friend was always happy to see her. Olivia gathered everything, called Jack, said that she was released, but she would not return home, and temporarily live with her friend. What happened? Why? He couldn't understand. Be patient. She didn't say anything else. She just hung up. Maria was waiting for her. She didn't know how to meet her friend, what to say. She thought she would figure it out when she met her. Hello, entered the girl in the apartment where she spent so many happy days. Jesus, Cain, looked at her friend. And do not say, you want to lose weight. Ask me how, smiled with one lip Olivia. Why not home? Maria realized that they had something going on. I don't want to. She sat down at the table. You don't want to tell me, or do you want to go home? Home. Tears flowed down her cheeks again. Tell me, Maria asked, knowing that after that it would be easier. I have all removed Poshinsky. I am now empty. She did not look at her. It's okay. The main thing is that you're alive. Her friend hugged her. And who needs me like this? Let Jack live alone. He's still young. He'll meet a girl. They'll get married. And then she'll give him a baby, Olivia sobbed. Are you staying? The girl guessed. Yes, for now, yes, Olivia confirmed. Well, let's remember our youth. Maria tried to distract her. Jack didn't come to them today. He let his wife come to her senses. But the next day he stood in the corridor of the apartment where the girls were, on his knees. Honey, come back. I feel so bad without you, he begged his wife. Jack, believe me, it's hard for you now, but it's the best option for you. I won't come back. She turned away so he wouldn't see her tears. What are you talking about? We've been through so much together and we'll get through this. He was sure of it. You'll thank me later. She pushed him away as he tried to hug her knees. Love, come back. Love. He couldn't find the words. Maria didn't interfere. She saw two people who love each other crying and there was nothing she could do about it. Jack, let's go and talk. She called the man when 2 hours had passed and they were saying the same thing to each other. About what? He looked at her with red eyes. Let's go, she called out to him on the landing. When they came out, he couldn't stop looking at the doors, behind which remained the one and only beloved he had chosen for life. Listen, let her calm down. As long as the womb is alive, she will blame herself for everything, Maria pleaded with Jack. What about me? Have you thought of me? I'll die without her, he cried again. Do not die. Do work. A month, 2, 3. She will think about everything, and you will be together again. I advise you, do not file for divorce unless it is necessary, the girl asked. Can I say goodbye to her? He rushed to the door. Write to her. Try to call her. Maybe it will be easier for both of you. She did not let him back into the apartment. Jack was heartbroken. Here she was, just standing in front of him. Alive, yes. Thin, yes, after surgery. But he loves her any way he can. The man stopped by the store on his way home. He made his way to the liquor section. He bought everything he needed there. Then he came home, to where everything was made by her hands. How hard it was. Jack went on a bender. He didn't want to think. He didn't want to see anyone. He just wanted to die. How are you feeling? Maria asked her friend every day. It seemed to her that if she didn't ask, she wouldn't tell her anything. Fine, Olivia answered every time. It was true. As far as her health was concerned, she wasn't sick anymore. Everything was fine. Walking was still hard, but there was no pain. I'm off to work. She kissed her friend and ran off. Maria went on social media, wanting to see what Jack was doing. She missed him terribly, but she realized that she shouldn't give slack. The girl saw that he hadn't been online for a long time. What happened? She didn't know. Maria, do you know what's wrong with Jack? She asked her friend when she returned in the evening. No, I haven't seen him since he came over, she shrugged. He hasn't been online in 2 weeks, she showed her. If you want me to find out, Maria was willing to do anything for her friend. No, he's probably doing it on purpose, Olivia refused. Okay, whatever you say, she agreed. They continued to live and be friends. Olivia, I'm on vacation. Why don't we go to the south? Maria suggested it one summer. Why, I would not refuse. She would now not hurt to breathe the sea air and relax in the warm sea. Then it was decided. Let's go. My friend was happy that she had managed to shake Olivia up. They decided that they would take the train and enjoy the conversation and the views from the window. I can't believe you're with me again. The same Olivia I used to know. Maria couldn't get enough of talking as they traveled. It was always me. You just had to understand me, she answered sadly. Why did you do that to Jack? He was ready to accept you. She decided that enough time had passed to talk about it. Why? Her friend looked up at her. What? She didn't understand. You start talking about him. You know that I love him, and I never hid it from anyone. It's just, it was necessary. Olivia turned away to the window. Maria realized she wasn't going to talk to her again for a while. The girls had arrived. They had rented a place to stay. Now all they had to do was check in, and then they could do whatever they wanted. To the sea? Maria looked at her friend. To the sea, repeated after her. The girls changed their clothes and went to the place where they had not been so much time. They came to the sea when they graduated. Then together they had saved up so that they had enough for tickets, and at least for a shack where they could spend the night. These memories were the warmest. The girls went to the beach and talked about those times. It was good. God, Maria, thank you. Olivia enjoyed the rays that shone directly into her eyes. This is a thank you. If it wasn't for you, it's unlikely I would have made up my mind, they hugged. Olivia realized that she had been saving up resentment against her friend for nothing. She still loved her just as much. The girls had only been at the sea for a week, but even that was enough for them to relax. When they were in the city, Olivia realized how lonely she was. At that moment, she decided to visit an orphanage for the first time. Why not? There are kids there that I love so much. They will brighten up my boring life, Olivia said. She still wasn't working. Good, do as you see fit. Maria supported her. When she came for the first time, she realized that the children's smiles and their sincere feeling lifted not only her Olivery, but everything else. Could I come to see you every day? She asked the principal then. Of course, he saw that the girl needed help, so he did not resist. Now, in her city, she was in the orphanage all the time, but when she went somewhere, she did not leave the children without attention, even though they were complete strangers. Maria, I am so happy. Now I have not one child, but several. It's been 3 years since her operation. Have you heard from Jack? Her friend asked her. He probably found someone else. Olivia didn't want to talk about it because it hurt. Jack had changed a lot since he'd gotten out of the state he'd been in for a long time. His mother, who was sick, helped. She called her son and asked for help, and all lately he hasn't had a free minute. He had been following the woman around. The man thought a lot about his life. He never filed for divorce. He remembered what Maria had told him. He never checked in with his wife again. He tried calling, but she just didn't answer. But Jack didn't give up, he waited. Maria, can I ask you a favor? Olivia looked at her. Of course, the woman replied. Can't you go to a place with me? Another question came from her friend. Tell me what the secrets are. She couldn't stand it. I want to go to my sister and apologize to her, Olivia admitted. It's not your fault, she wondered. Please, just please, let's try. She was ready to do anything so that her own person would only forgive her. Okay, Maria was ready for anything, just to make her friend feel good. They were back on the train, traveling to where Julia, Olivia's younger sister, once lived. Do you remember the address? Her friend asked. Of course, I'll never forget it. They stepped out onto the platform, and now they were heading for the place where Julia had lived. At the house where the car stopped, the friends got out of the car, paid, and thanked the driver. Ready? Maria looked at Olivia. Yes, she exhaled, and together they walked into the entryway. They knocked on the door, which Olivia remembered from the last time she'd been here, for about 5 minutes, but no one opened it. Maybe it worked, Maria suggested. I don't know. Olivia had been so determined to meet her, and now her fervor had calmed down a bit. Who are you here to see? The aunt asked sternly as she came up to the floor. My sister Julia lives here. Olivia turned to her. You mean lived? The woman they were talking to corrected her. Lived how? Olivia realized she was late. She found a boyfriend and moved out. The old woman spat on the floor. Why do you do that? Surprised friends almost in a voice. It became calmer, and that was here. She did not tell everything in detail. Do not know where? Maria asked hopefully. No, and I don't want to. She went further up the steps. Before we leave here, I want to stop by the orphanage. Olivia looked at her friend. Of course, Maria knew this oddity of hers. They went to the store first, and then they would go to the children's house. But it didn't work out. Maria called a cab. They stood at the entrance as suddenly Olivia began to shake. She bent backwards, which frightened her friend. Ambulance, urgent. She dictated the address into the phone. Maria escorted her friend to the hospital. Doctors said that one day will not do here, so the girl went home alone. She thought a lot about what could have happened, but then left it. Olivia would get better, and she'd tell her own story. Are you okay? Olivia opened her eyes. She realized she was in the hospital. In her mind was that they were going to the kids. I don't know, she didn't realize what state she was in yet. Hello. A young man in a white coat entered the room. Yes, Olivia looked out the window to determine what time of day it was, but was unable to do so. We suspect you've metastasized. He sat down next to Olivia's bed. What? Why would that happen? She stared at him. It happens after surgery, the doctor told her. I don't want you to do anything, she cried. You're against the exam. It was the first time he'd ever seen a patient like that. How much will I have left if it's really what you say it is? She wanted to know the exact figure. No one can say, maybe you'll live a year, maybe 2. But sometimes even a month is not enough. He was not looking at her, but writing or drawing in his notebook. Olivia could not see that. So I have a month if it's really bad. She looked him in the eye. Yes, consider it so. He stood up and quickly left the room. Good, the girl said to herself already. She wasn't going to spend any time here. She considered that only to waste it. Olivia decided this evening that she would spend the night here, and tomorrow she would just leave. She didn't need any treatment. Who needed her? A simple, useless woman who could do nothing for anyone. Goodbye. She walked out into the hospital lobby. Wait, a young girl wanted to catch up with her. Thank you, I don't need your help, Olivia mumbled. She walked out of the hospital building. She didn't know the city, so she had to ask passersby. Excuse me, can you tell me where the nearest bank branch is? She asked. Of course, the grandmother explained everything to her in detail. After that, the girl went there. She knew that there were some savings on the account. She could withdraw them and do a good deed for others. She wouldn't need it anymore anyway. Good morning. She walked into the bank. Hello, can I help you? A young woman came up to her. I want to withdraw money from my deposit. She saw that there was no line. Great, go to this window. She took a ticket for her. Olivia gave her passport. The girl who sat opposite her smiled. She showed and told her everything. The account turned out to be not so little. She had gotten it all, and now happy, she was on her way to the toy store. Give me something inexpensive but decent. I wanted to get a lot of presents. Why don't we go in and have a look? The salesperson was looking at her. Okay, Olivia liked it here. They walked down the aisles. She piled all the things she liked into a cart. With some of the dolls and games, Olivia stopped to see what they were and what to do with them. It's amazing. She would raise her eyes to the woman walking next to her. We didn't have that in our childhood. Yes, the manufacturers have stepped up now, she confirmed. I'll take it all. Olivia pointed to a cart that was filled to the top. Are you sure? The saleswoman couldn't believe that there would be such revenue today. Yes, she nodded. After everything was bagged, Olivia walked out of the store. Still having some money left, she decided to go to a nearby store that sold various sweets. There she bought candy, lollipops, and many other little things. On the street, she called a cab. Where to? The man looked at the bags that didn't even fit in the trunk. To the orphanage, Olivia said confidently. She was afraid that he might not be the only one in the city. But it wasn't. Then the girl exhaled. They successfully reached the place. The cab driver helped unload. Happily, he looked at his passenger with respect. Not everyone like this will buy a lot of things with his own money and then just give them to the children. Thank you, she smiled, because now she was pleased to do good deeds, however, as always. Hello, can you help me? She approached the guard. What do you have there? He looked through the fence. Gifts to the pupils of this institution, she pointed at the building. Now he opened the gate and went for the packages that stood on the sidewalk. Olivia met everyone here, first with the nannies they were the first to come out to meet, and then with the director. Could I not just pass it on, but spend some time with the kids? She asked him. Of course, he didn't mind when such guests came. Olivia entered the group. The children were sitting on the floor, playing with toys. Some were running around, others were sitting quietly drawing. She decided to meet the kids first and then give them presents. Mom? A little boy ran up to her. Honey, no, I'm just a good fairy. Olivia knew how children reacted to adults who came to them. Some of them wanted to get them to take her in. Others wanted to gain her trust. But that's not why she was here. What's your name? A girl of about 5 came up to her. Olivia, she looked at her with wide open eyes. And I'm Maddie, she said and put her arms around the girl's neck. Olivia couldn't believe it. This girl looked just like her as a little girl. She pulled her close to her and thought she couldn't leave her here. Guys, I brought you presents. The girl was in a hurry. Where are they? Rejoiced. Now she quickly went to the tutor, told her everything. She only nodded her head, listening to the instructions. Hello again, Olivia panted, as if in a hurry, ran into the principal's office. Thank you, Olivia. He stood up to meet her. Okay, wait, she stopped him. I want to know about the girl Maddie, who was in the group I was in today. Olivia spoke confused and hurriedly because she didn't think she had enough time for everything. Okay, wait, I'll find out now. The man tried to stop her. The man called the tutor. She explained everything to him. The principal only shook his head. So he sat down at his desk and pulled the right folder out of the closet. Maddie. Yes, worried Olivia. Let's see, dropped off at the orphanage, he read. So you don't have any information on the girl? She looked at him with wide open eyes. That's right, he answered, like in the army. I need a list of documents that will allow me to adopt the girl. She looked at the man as if he was her savior. Here, he pulled out a sheet. Thank you. Don't give her to anyone. I'll be back, Olivia promised, and ran out of the office. She was on her way to the train station now. Please, a ticket. She held out all the money she had left. Please, handed her change and the ticket to the cashier. As Olivia boarded the train, she pulled her cell phone out of her pocket, her hands shaking. From memory, Olivia dialed a number that had been familiar to her for years. Jack, hello, she shouted when she was answered. Olivia? He was silent in surprise. Yes, it's me. She saw that other passengers were already looking at her. She decided to get up and walk out into the vestibule. All of a sudden, what? He was surprised. Jack, can you meet me at the station? She dictated to him which train she was taking. Of course, he looked as if he was ready for that call. Then I'll expect you there in a few hours. She hung up the phone, went back to her seat, and sat there looking out the window. Time stretched very slowly. It seemed like she and Maria had traveled very fast there. And now the train seemed like it was going very slowly. Olivia looked out the window, saw them pulling up, and then her pickup man. "Hi." She stepped out of the carriage. The excited state was gone. She was more calm now. "Olivia." He was walking towards her. Wait, she realized that now the questioning and hugging would start. She didn't need it. "Olivia, I've waited so long for this moment." He wanted to hug her like before. "Jack, I have something serious to talk to you about." She looked into his eyes. "Let's go." He took her hand and led her to the exit of the station. "Listen," she got into the car. "Wait, let's get home, and there you'll tell everything calmly." It was obvious that Jack was worried. Good. She didn't dare to distract him from the road. Olivia sat next to the man she loved so much, but because she didn't want to ruin his life, she hadn't been around him in so long. "Do you have someone?" She asked the question only because she didn't want his new girlfriend to get the wrong idea. "Did you get divorce papers?" he asked and looked. "No." She tensed because she didn't know anything about it. "Why are you asking then?" He looked at the road. "Sorry, just needed to know." She didn't say anything else. When the house where she and Jack had once lived so happily showed up in the distance, Olivia grew sad. She realized that she wanted to ask him for something that would help her so much, but whether he would agree. "Come on." He opened the door for her and gave her his hand. "Okay," agreed. Olivia agreed to everything. They went up to the apartment. That smell of the entryway she remembered. A lot of grandmothers lived here, so it smelled like cooking and other goodies. "Come in." He opened the doors and Olivia realized that nothing had changed here since she'd left. "Jack," she looked around. "Yeah, I didn't change anything. I was afraid you'd come back and you wouldn't like it." He looked at her. After that, the husband and wife, who had not been together for a long time, walked to the kitchen. Tea. He looked at his favorite woman. It seemed to Jack that it was a dream. He was sleeping and everything was passing by him. "Yes," she nodded. "Do you need help?" The man put 2 cups on the table. "Very much," Olivia cried. "Speak." He took her hands in his. "I'm sorry for barging into your life like this," she cried. "I'm listening, and I'll help you with anything you ask." The man had tears in his eyes too. "I've been staying with Maria all this time, but I think you already know that." She began her story. "Yes, what's the point? Maria's not well." He tried to get ahead of her thoughts. "No, listen to me. If you say no, I understand." She looked him in the eyes. "Okay." He fell silent. "A few days ago, I asked Maria to help me. You know, my sister thinks I'm guilty, so I wanted to apologize. We went to the place where she lived, but unfortunately she wasn't found," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "And you want me to find her?" Jack guessed. "No, please listen," she pleaded with him. "I'm listening. Speak." He squeezed her palms. "I don't know if you and—" Of course, he folded it in half and put it in his pocket. "Beloved," she looked at him. "I don't have much left. I need to get everything done." "I hear you. I promise that by the end of the month everything will be ready." He never cheated, so Olivia believed him. The family was together again. Olivia had to get used to having her lover around again. She did everything as usual, and Jack tried to please her in everything. As promised, the man did his best. They got into this car and drove to where Olivia thought her daughter was. The principal greeted them in a friendly manner. He accepted all the documents, promised to review everything as soon as possible. "Mommy?" Maddie approached the couple. "Yes, dear, we'll be home soon." Olivia sat down in front of the girl. "And who's that, Daddy?" She pointed at Jack. "How did you guess?" She laughed. "I don't know." She looked at him with blue eyes. "Olivia, when you told me about the girl, I didn't believe you." They were sitting in the car outside the orphanage. "And now," she looked over to where the children were walking. "Now I know what you mean." He looked that way too. Jack and Olivia decided not to leave here until a decision was made. They got a room at a hotel, and that's where they've been staying. "Tell me, what happened here when you and Maria arrived?" The man asked a question his wife didn't want to answer. "I don't want to upset you." She looked at him again. "And I want to hear it." She realized he wouldn't let up. "The doctors told me there's not much time left." "Listen, don't interrupt." She could see her husband wanted to say something. "There's a Maria who's liked you for a long time. Now we'll adopt Maddie and then you'll live with her." "What are you talking about? There's always a way out." He couldn't believe it was true. Okay, I'll let you in on my little secret, she admitted. Listening, he was ready to accept any decision she made. When they told me I was dying, I decided to buy presents for the kids to make someone feel better. And when I saw Maddie, I knew I wouldn't die. I'd claw my teeth out, but I wouldn't leave her, and she cried again. My darling, you won't die, I promise you. He couldn't believe it was really happening to him. Okay, I believe you. They hugged and stood like that for a long time. 3 weeks passed. Jack and Olivia were back at the gates of the orphanage. So how's our case going? The girl walked into the director's office. I can congratulate you. He handed her the documents. No way, Olivia was so moved that she almost fainted. It's okay. The man helped her into the chair. Very good. She couldn't breathe properly. After that, Olivia got down and called Jack over, who was also excited that they were about to have a daughter. They walked into the group. Maddie was so beautiful in her dress, wearing bows. Come here. Olivia held out her arms to her. Mommy, she hugged her. Yes, I'm your mommy. She pulled her against her and cried. They all walked out of the orphanage building together, past the gate, and got into the car. So, family home? The man asked the woman and child. Yes, they shouted with glee. Driving and talking, everything was fine. When they were in their town, they showed their daughter the apartment. She loved it. Listen, I decided to go to the examination. I will agree to any operation. You only Maddie do not throw, said trustingly to her husband Olivia. Sweetheart, we'll always be there for you, and I'm sure that nothing will happen to you, he promised her. Okay, but you still have to promise, she looked up at him. I promise, he kissed her. Afterward, Olivia went to her daughter's room to read her a bedtime story. She was sitting on the bed, doing nothing. Why are you sitting like that? Wondered the new mom. So that you do not start scolding me for touching things, said the girl. You what? It's all yours. You can touch whatever you want in here, laughed Olivia. Really? The girl looked with such trusting eyes. You what? Her mother hugged her. Thank you for taking me out of there, cried the girl, and hugged her. The next day, Olivia made an appointment with the doctor. She walked there on woozy legs. Yesterday, she didn't care what would happen to her. But today, she wanted to live, because now she had someone to live for. Hello, she entered the doctor's office. Greetings. What are we complaining about? He took the card from her hands and began to look through the records. Scared? Olivia asked him. No, he shook his head. Make the appointment. I'll do anything. She looked up at him, head held up proudly. Here are all the referrals. After you pass the doctors, come straight to me. He handed her the papers. Thank you. She was willing to do anything to live. Olivia was not ready to stop at anything. She wanted this child. She had seen this girl in her dreams so many times. And she hadn't. She'd been through so much to just give up on not. You did good. I'm proud of you, Jack had told her at home. Enough. Olivia wanted to be with her daughter while she was still in this world. Okay, whatever you say. Jack understood his wife, because she was the most precious thing in the world. She was going to the research, and she thought, if they find something there now, she would do any operation. She would endure another course of chemotherapy, but she would stay with her girl. Come in. The lab tech greeted her. Thank you. She realized that many people hated the man, and he was just doing his job. One analysis, another, and a few more, but Olivia didn't grumble against anything. She waited for the most important appointment of all, with the doctor who would deliver the verdict. When? Jack asked simply. In 2 days. That was the length of time before the verdict that awaited the girl. Good afternoon, she entered the office, no sadness on her face. I see that even though you know what we're looking for, you're not discouraged, he said to the girl, and opened her card, which contained everything Olivia was afraid of. Let's get this over with, she didn't want to rant. Okay, he began to look at the results of all the tests. Olivia, can you wait in the hallway? The man asked her. Of course, she realized she was in the middle of something else, and that meant only one thing, that she was not doing well again. Come in, the nurse came out an hour later to see her. In that time, Olivia had seen the doctor go somewhere else. Speak plainly, she looked at the doctor, and she didn't want him to humor her. You're doing fine, he answered her. I don't believe it. She was determined. Where they took your tests were inaccurate. Or maybe you had a cold or something that showed that. He held out the paperwork to her. Is this true? She looked at the man and couldn't believe that she had been misdiagnosed. You can go to any clinic. They will tell you the same thing. The doctor smiled. Thank you, she hugged him. You what? He was dumbfounded by such an act. And then when he imagined what the patient was experiencing while he waited to be told, he understood her. Olivia was walking home. No, she wasn't walking, she was floating. Right now, she wanted to do everything for her loved ones. Maria, hi. She dialed her friend's number. Olivia, I almost went crazy. Where are you? What's wrong with you? She shouted into the phone. Tonight we are waiting for you to visit, she said cheerfully. What visit? Was baffled by her friend. To such, come to the old address. We are back with Jack. Olivia knew how to surprise. I'm in shock, Maria said as if she didn't believe her friend. I'm still in shock myself. Come over. I have one more thing we have to do together. Olivia spoke in riddles. I'll be there in a couple hours, Maria promised and hung up. Jack, she walked over herself, put her arms around him, and started kissing him. What's wrong? He, like his friend, didn't quite understand what had happened. I've been checked. Everything is clean, she rejoiced him. I'm so glad. Be healthy and happy always. With me or with anyone else, he responded to her tenderness. And now for daycare, she announced to her husband. It's too early. They'd never picked up Maddie at this hour. It was a holiday, so the child could afford to be with her parents. Olivia was sure of what she was saying. Maddie and her new parents were home. Maria had arrived. It's been so long since we've sat in such company, she looked at her friends. It would be very often now, her friend promised her. You had some business with us, her husband reminded her. Yes, don't think I'm crazy. She looked at the people closest to her. Talk already. They couldn't stand the suspense. I want to take a DNA test, the girl mumbled. I don't get it, Jack looked at his wife. That's what I meant when I said that you'd think I wasn't doing well at home, Olivia laughed. Well, talk already. Her friend and husband were waiting. Well, that can't be a coincidence, she looked at Maddie. My sister lived in this town. There's only one orphanage, and Julia left quickly. No one knows anything about her, Olivia suggested. I hear you, Jack nodded, the smile gone from his face. What then? The wife couldn't understand. What if it turns out to be a complete stranger's child? He was afraid of that question, but he asked it. All the same, the main thing is that I will do it, was confident in herself the girl. Good, Jack was ready to support her in everything. I'm not a counselor here. Maria didn't want to participate in something that could make her friend depressed again. We'll do it tomorrow, won't we? She looked at the girl. Yes, Mommy, she smiled. That's it, and I don't care about other opinions at all. Olivia hugged her daughter. They came to the clinic, where they took the biological material. Now all they had to do was wait. Jack, don't you think so? They lay in bed in the evening. Let's wait for the results. For the first time in his life, the man didn't want to draw any conclusions. Okay. She put her arms around her husband and lay on his chest as she had done before. Time stretched slowly. Olivia called the clinic every day. She had had enough of finding out the whole truth. At this point, she didn't stop going to the orphanage and socializing with those she felt needed her presence. Olivia? She heard a woman's voice on the phone. Yes, she answered with a sinking heart. We have everything ready. You can come and get the results, she said politely. Who's with me? She looked at the family. We are, the husband and daughter shouted in unison. The family sat in the car. The girl had an envelope in her hands. You've waited so long, and now you're dragging it out. Jack couldn't stand it. I'm scared, admitted Olivia. Let me do it. He looked at her. No, it's my story. I get to open it. She peeled off the top and started to pull out the paper. The simple A4 size sheet seemed so long. Patience was running short. Well, Jack waited to see what it said. Compatibility. That word she just knew hadn't gotten to that line yet. Olivia. God, you could have a heart attack that way, Jack said nervously. 77 and 6, she glared at him. What did you have to prove? He questioned. Maddie, you're mine, she hugged her, though it was uncomfortable. Mommy, I love you so much. The girl may have been faking it, but she wanted to show the woman who'd taken her from that place that she cared about her. Can I ask you something? Olivia looked at her husband. Yes, he nodded. Find my sister, she begged. Good, he was going to do that himself at some point. After that conversation, Olivia asked him every night how it was going. But Jack wasn't looking for himself, so he answered in other people's words. Jack, what's up? It's been a month since she gave all the data on Julia. Olivia, we have to wait, he realized that. How long? She couldn't. Be patient, he approached her. Okay, she agreed. Jack and Olivia never fought. The man always remembered the moment when his wife left just to get out of his way. Darling, dance, the man came home one day. It had been almost a month since the search for Julia. Did you find her? She guessed. Yes, here's the address. He handed Olivia a piece of paper. Are you with me? She knew he'd always be there for her. Let's go. Olivia was also with her parents. They got in the car. The address was known, so the family prepared for a long journey. They drove, they stopped, everyone was happy. This is the house. They stopped late at night near it. Why don't we spend the night somewhere and then go to her? Jack asked. No, I've been waiting for this moment for so long, Olivia countered. She yanked the door open and it gave way. After that, it was only 2 floors to go, and they were at the apartment. The girl knocked. Who else is here? The girl opened the door. She was in a nightgown and clearly not herself. Julia? Olivia recognized her as her sister. What do you want? She raised her head. To talk. She could have left, but she didn't want to. What? Yes, you. At that moment, Maddie appeared in the doorway. Do you recognize her? Olivia asked. What, how? Julia was confused. Maybe you could let us in the apartment. The sister was Olivioic. Okay, come on in. After Julia saw Maddie, she couldn't do anything. The apartment smelled musty. Everyone went into the room. Jack, please go with Maddie. Make some tea in the kitchen. She looked at her husband to distract the girl. Okay, headed that way they did. Tell me about it. Looked pointedly at her sister Olivia. You know I'll never forgive you for what you did to Mom, she hissed through her teeth. I was just a kid like you. I never wanted to do anything bad. Olivia always defended herself. I met Jeremy then. We were together. He helped, provided. You could say life was good. Then I found out I was expecting a child. He was happy. He even gave me a ring, a bronze one. But that doesn't change the matter. She paused, looking at the table. There was nothing there. What happened next? Olivia waited for the rest of the story. Nothing. As long as everyone was happy, I was pregnant. For me, everything I want, but in acceptable norms, she corrected herself. Quickly, Olivia didn't want to hear how her sister lived with her boyfriends. I gave birth to her. Julia glanced toward the kitchen. And what? Olivia cried. Nothing. We came home. And then with each passing year, I saw how much she looked like you, as if it wasn't me who gave birth to her, but you. Julia's voice became unpleasant again. And you took her to an orphanage. I couldn't believe my older sister. What was I supposed to do? Hate the baby? The younger one was now looking at the older one. How could you? Olivia was crying uncontrollably. I could have. Julia didn't feel guilty. What if I hadn't seen her? Olivia screamed. Then it wasn't fate, simply said the girl who sat across from her. You know, the fact that you blamed me all your life for your mother's death, it has a place. You were a little girl, and what's in your brain is what's in your brain. But putting your own daughter in an orphanage, and you had my number, you could have called. You're not going to leave? The younger sister was sitting there, showing she wasn't happy to have visitors. I thought you and I would make up, and then we'd be together, supporting each other. Olivia pressed her lips together. And what did you get? The girl looked at her with insolence. Nothing. Olivia got up from the chair. She realized that this was the first time she had talked to her sister seriously. Before, there had been constant accusations and name-calling from Julia. Family, have you had tea? She shouted towards the kitchen. Yes, my mommy. Maddie squinted at Julia, but she hardly remembered her. Darling, she hugged Jack as he approached. Take me away from here. Okay, let's go. He took his daughter in his arms, and as he left the apartment, he turned and met his eyes with the girl who lived here. He realized that she hadn't made any conclusions from the life she had lived. Are you coming? He heard from his wife. Running, they laughed together with Maddie. The family came out of the driveway. They got into the car. The husband looked at his wife. Satisfied? He asked. The only thing I cared about was whether she could take our daughter away from us, and I wanted to cry. But Olivia held on. "Mommy, no one will take me away." Hugged her across the seat. Only at that moment she calmed down. "We'll always be together." He just touched her cheek with his lips, then started the car and they drove off. "Steve, where are you?" the wife shouted outside. "I'm here," she heard from somewhere deep in the yard. Alyssa walked down the path. She saw her husband standing with a shovel. She was surprised. It was too early to dig anything. When she walked over, she realized what was there. She smiled. Well, finally, she had been asking him to clean the cesspool for a long time. "Yo, do you know how much is in here?" Steve had a bandage on his face. "That's okay, but it'll be a decent toilet." She walked over to him and kissed him. The woman had wanted a restroom outside for a long time. There was one in the house too, but when a big company gathered outside, it was not comfortable to go indoors. And now she was glad that her husband had listened to her. Stiva looked out the window in the morning. The shovel was bothering her eyes, urging her to take it and work. He had long promised Ellison that he would make the toilet clean, but he couldn't get his hands on it, and it was unpleasant. He gathered his thoughts, got up, and thought that today he would do everything. There was nowhere to put it off. He went out into the yard, took a tool of labor, and went to a small wooden structure. It took some huffing and puffing, but he got it sideways. Well, here we go. He put gloves on his hands and got to work. It was hard, but the man tried. When the job was half done, Steve decided to take the waste cart to the dump. He climbed out, looked at himself, wondered how he was going to get on, but then he waved goodbye and drove the cart down the path. He came back, jumped off again, and the work continued. Suddenly, the shovel bumped into something hard. Steve tried next to it, but it was there too. "The ground can't be so hard," he said to himself and poked the shovel further and harder, but nothing came out. Listen, come here," he shouted in the direction of the house. "What?" 5 minutes later, the woman was here. "Look," the man poked with the shovel in several places. A resounding thud could be heard. "What's in there?" She looked at her husband in surprise. "Treasure," he laughed. "You say that too," she smiled. "Okay, go, I'll get it, I'll call you." Steve sent his wife back. Still no help. The man started fumbling for the trim of what was here. It turned out the thing was not small. Steve huffed and puffed, tried, but could do nothing. Then he dropped everything and went into the summer shower. There he quickly stripped off a layer of dirt, put on another robe, and went after his neighbor. "Hi, Logan." He walked up to the fence and saw the man chopping wood. "Hey," he straightened up. "Come on, I need some help," he called out to him. "What have you got there again?" Logan didn't refuse, but he went reluctantly. "I was cleaning out the cesspool today, and I found something," he began to explain. "Treasure?" Just like Steve suggested the neighbor. "I don't know, but I told my wife the same thing." The man was cheerful. They went into the yard. "What a smell you have here," the neighbor grumbled. "Nothing, you'll get used to it." He led Logan to the hole. "Wow," Logan looked at the find. "You should change your clothes." The neighbor looked at him. He went to the barn and brought Logan some old clothes. When he had changed his clothes, the work continued. But the two of them couldn't get anything out. The box, or whatever it was, wouldn't budge. "I'll go get Lucas." Logan looked at his neighbor. "Yeah, just take off your clothes," Steve warned him. "I'm just going to the fence." He didn't want to waste time. He was already interested in what could be there. Sergi came to the rescue very quickly. He was already in his work clothes. Logan warned him. "The three of us worked together." They managed to shovel a little bit, and friends with crowbars picked it up. Now all that was left was to get everything upstairs. The neighbors were all muddy and their hands were slipping, but they were getting closer to the goal. When the big box was on the ground, the men looked at the find, and each began to sketch out ideas of what it might be. "It looks like a coffin," said one. Saying either, it was getting scary. "All right, showers are over there. You go ahead, and I'll do the work here," Steva commanded them. He went to the fence, took off the hose, untwisted it, hooked it to the water. The strong jet immediately began to wash away the dirt and everything else. The further the box became clean. Steva became convinced of his friend's words. It was indeed a coffin, but not a simple one. but a zinc one. When the friends returned, they opened their mouths. They stood there stunned and stared at the find. Is it like that? Logan asked. As you can see, Steve didn't know what to do or say next. He also went to take a shower like the others. Work was definitely over for the day. Steve called out to his wife. When she came out to look, she opped and crouched down. Steve, that's it, she spoke softly, her voice shaking. Can't you see? He walked over to her. I can see, but how? Where from? Alyson cried. Steve and Alyson had long dreamed of buying an apartment. They were very picky. The couple had met recently. Both had marriage under their belt, children, but there was no love. They sought each other, and there was an instant spark between them. Alyson, are you in love? Her friend asked her when they met again. You have no idea. The woman looked at Leslie in shock. Where did you fall in love? The woman didn't understand. I will tell. You will not believe, smiled modestly Alyson. Leslie sat back down and picked up her wine glass. They had a certain day to meet. Then the girlfriends put aside all their business and went to the countryside, where Leslie had a small cottage. All day long they'd just sit and drink wine and talk. You know me, I never spend money for nothing, began her story Alyson. What's that got to do with it? My friend was surprised. And that day everything was going wrong for me. I was going to work in the morning. I put on my tights, and I noticed an arrow on the way out. I looked at my shoes. I couldn't even wear them without tights, and I was upset. Alyson sat down in the chair across from me. So you went to the store and met him? Leslie was trying to guess. No. She put on her old sandals, which were comfortable without pantyhose, and hurried to work. Of course, she was late. There was no other way, she sipped from her glass. So what? She couldn't wait for Leslie's climax. The day went on as usual. At the end of the work day, I turned everything off and left the office. When I went down the stairs, I caught my heel on something and flew down. Leslie at that moment groaned and made big eyes. And he caught you? Again, she interjected. Either you're listening or I'm not telling. Alyson took offense. Come on, she straightened her back. When she got to her feet, she realized there was a slight sprain. There was no heel on the sandal, so I sat down on these unfortunate steps. And then he appeared, the prince on a white horse, and saved you. Ira was getting sarcastic. All right, I see you have your own stories and you're not interested in mine. Alyson got up and went to get some snacks. Come on, her friend followed her. No offense, you just tell everything in such detail. She caught up and hugged Alyson. They walked back in, sitting back down in their seats. I'm sitting there crying. I don't know how to go home. I see a cab waiting nearby. I'm glad. But then I realize it's going to cost a lot of money. She raised a finger. So that's what frugality is all about, she smiled. Yes, Alyson agreed, and the driver saw it, and he got out of the car and came toward me. I'm telling you, a prince, Leslie laughed. Okay, so be it. Alyson didn't argue with her. What happened next? She said, waiting for her friend to continue. He came over and asked me what I could do to help. I showed him my swollen foot and heel, and he smiled. Then he helped me up and led me to the car. I didn't resist. We got in the car. Steve started talking to me. I was sitting there, and his talk gave me goosebumps. Alyson blushed and looked at her friend. Really? You felt it right away? Leslie wasn't laughing now. He admitted later that he had something like that, Alyson said. Wow, did you invite him over? My friend was curious. I wanted to, but I was shy. We got to my house, and I got out, and I couldn't stand on my feet. So he ran out, gave me his hand. I leaned on him. The perfume I smelled made me almost faint. Steve took me to my apartment and looked at me, but I couldn't understand what he wanted. They laughed later about the fact that he was waiting for payment, laughed Alyson. God, that's so Donaldic. Leslie stood up and added wine to the glasses. I didn't dare ask him out. I thought we'd never meet again, she chided herself. And the next day I got ready for work, stretched my leg, put on comfortable shoes, went out, and he is standing at the entrance. The woman blushed again. He came for money, guessed her friend. I thought so too, and he came out, invited me into the car, opened the door. I said I'd walk, but Steve insisted. He said it was a gesture of help, no payment. Alyssum was silent for a second, remembering something. That's how you two met, Leslie concluded instead. You could say that. After that, he came to pick me up in the evening, and then I was no longer shy. I told him to come up. I'll buy you tea. That's where we met at the table and got to know each other properly. Now together, while we communicate, but he calls to move to him. She put a glass on the table. How interesting, and they say there are no coincidences. Leslie was silent. After sitting down, Alyssum told her friend to come and visit her. She would introduce her to Steve. Leslie couldn't miss such an opportunity, so she agreed to come. They agreed on what day it would happen and went home. Steve was warned about the meetings with her friend, so he did not bother with calls and questions. When Alyssum was already home, she dialed him herself. Hi, she still felt awkward. It's young people getting to know each other, going out, texting, and they're doing the same. I've been waiting for your call, he said in his beautiful voice. Come over, she called him every time, because she didn't want to meet on his turf. I'll be there soon, he hung up and Alyssum started cooking. Steve arrived as promised. Their evenings passed monotonously. First, they would sit at the table, drinking tea or wine. Then they'd go to a room, watch a movie, talk, but it never went any further. And one day, Statha came to see Alyssum. Why are you all dressed up? She didn't understand. Leslie was supposed to visit them today. Can't I wear a suit? He couldn't understand. Are you getting ready to meet my friend? The woman smiled. You could say that. I want to look at the highest level, Stiva admitted. Good, she'll be here soon. Alyssum knew Leslie was never late, and indeed, at exactly 7 p.m., the bell rang. The landlady opened the doors. Her girlfriend stood on the doorstep. Hi, she handed her a bottle of champagne and a box of chocolates. Come on in, Alyssum led her through the door. Leslie walked into the kitchen. There was a handsome man sitting at the table. She smiled at him and said hello. Alyssum's been telling me about you, he told her. And what did she tell you about me? Leslie smiled and looked at her friend. Nothing bad, only good. Stiva offered the woman a chair to sit on. This evening was a little more fun than usual. Leslie was telling different stories that she and Alyssum had going on. And then, when her husband left her, she got to this point. Please don't then, put her hand on hers. Okay, I'm sorry, please don't. Leslie stopped talking. Did your divorce with him go badly somehow? Steve asked. In principle, everything is fine, but I do not really want to remember these moments, especially in front of you. She raised her eyes to the man. Okay, you do not want, so we will not. Stava was ready to do everything to make only this woman was happy. Afterward, they went to see Leslie off, and on the way back, Stiva suggested sitting down on a bench. Why, let's go home, Alyssum asked him. Wait, he waited until she sat down. Then he pulled something out of his breast pocket, got down on one knee, and handed the woman a ring. Steve, are you sure? Alyssum had been self-conscious about her age all along. More than ever, he told her, took her face in his palms, and kissed her on the lips. It made her feel so happy that everything trembled inside. They went home happy. Will you stay? Alyssum asked her boyfriend for the first time. If you let me, I'll stay, he told her honestly. That evening they got serious. Alyssum knew she would give the man a positive answer. She sat in front of the mirror and looked at herself. Yes, 45, but not old yet. She began to smooth her face. She had to break the news to her children, and Alyssum was afraid of how they would react. Her son Austin had long ago graduated from college, now lived and worked in another city, and had recently started a family. Her daughter was also enrolled and pleased her mother with her grades. Alyssum called first her son and then her daughter, inviting them to visit. The daughter was due this weekend, and the son said he'd be there too. That's when she'd introduce everyone and talk about getting married. Steve, don't you want to invite your kids? She called him the next day. They won't go, he said with certainty. Why do you think so? The woman was surprised. Their mother decides everything for them. His voice was sad. Well, don't be sad, she wished him and hung up. Everything was fine. The brother and sister met on Saturday. The mother was dressed up. Mom, what's going on? Olga was the first to arrive. In the evening, you'll find out she was laughing. She was happy. Since their father left, the children have never seen her like that. What secrets? Julia went into the room. Austin entered the apartment. "Oh, it smells good." He sniffed the air with his nose. "Hi," Alyson came out to him. "Wow," he gave a thumbs up in admiration. Trying hard, the mother hugged her son. After that, a friend came. She knew that Alyson would introduce Steve to the children, but about the proposal was a complete surprise. "Who are we waiting for? Let's go to the table, because I'm very hungry," said the young man. "Let's wait a minute," his mother asked. She kept looking at her watch. "And who are we waiting for?" He asked everyone who was here. "Where's your wife?" His mother changed the subject. "She has no time, something about work, the daughter with her mother-in-law." He immediately answered all the questions. Good. Just as she said that, the doorbell rang. Alyson got up from her seat, her cheeks flaming. She walked over and opened it. A man entered the apartment. "Meet Steve. This is Steve." She introduced him to the kids. Julia stepped out to him, the girl. Austin shook the young man's hand. "I am very pleased to meet the children of my favorite woman." Steva was gallant. "And now we can go to the table," said Alyson cheerfully. And they all walked together into the hall. "You haven't said a word for so long, have you? It's obvious that you are not the first day together." The son looked at his mother and put a pie on his plate. "I'm sorry, but I felt a little uncomfortable, embarrassed or something. And yesterday Steve proposed to me," and she raised her hand with the ring, deciding there was no more time. "Mommy, congratulations. Uncle Steve's a great choice." Her daughter came up to her. "I'm telling her the same thing," said Leslie. "When's the wedding?" my son asked. "I don't know. We haven't been anywhere yet. But if everything goes well, it'll be in a month." The woman gibbered and looked at Steve. Yes, he was in agreement with his wife to be on everything. They sat, talking. Who was talking about what? The children stayed at their mother's and Steve needed to go home. He called Leslie for a ride. She didn't refuse. "See you later, love." He kissed Steve's hand. "Bye, darling," she smiled. "Mom, you're lucky." She and her daughter sat in the kitchen. "I don't understand how this could have happened," the woman replied. "Does he have children?" Austin joined them. "Yes, but they don't communicate," Alyson told them. "Too bad," shook his head. After everyone had learned the truth, Alyson announced the upcoming wedding at work. She herself didn't understand why she was so embarrassed when she talked about it. She hadn't taken anyone away from her family. She hadn't cheated on anyone. What was there to be ashamed of? "Listen, we congratulate you." The coworkers cheered, as did everyone else. "You deserve this happiness." They hugged her. "I invite you all to the wedding," she prostrated. "We will definitely come," agreed those. Steva and Alyson applied, just as the woman had said. They were given a date in a month. Now everything had to be thought out and prepared. Steve did everything his future wife asked him to do. He went shopping, to the restaurant, to the atelier, because he realized that the woman already had a lot of problems. Everything was ready. The guests were gathered. It was the happiest day in the life of Alyson and Steve. They were married. Now they had to decide where they would live. Tamara's apartment was small, but it was close to her work and the center. Steve's apartment was bigger, but it would be harder to get to. So far, they had settled on the first option. The woman was comfortable here. Everything was her own. No need to get used to anything. "And let's sell our apartments and buy one large and spacious," suggested the husband to his wife. Why, it was a good offer. She had never even thought of such a thing. Realtors called several times a day, wanted to show options, but the spouses were not satisfied with a lot of things. "Old house far away, plumbing doesn't work, and other things." "You're so picky, as if you don't want us to buy something," Steve told her in the evening. "You know it's true. I don't want an apartment. Let's buy a house in the country," she suggested to him. "What about work?" He didn't understand her. "Yes, it will be far away, but nature, sauna and everything else," she said dreamily. "Well, let's see the options." Steva immediately dialed the realtor and said that their plans had changed. By the time Alyson had found the cabin, the man's apartment had already been sold. He now had enough money to buy the house. "You wanted to sell mine too, didn't you?" Alyson wondered. "Let there be at least some housing in the city," her husband told her judiciously. "That's right too. Olga will come there," she agreed with him. Now Steva and Alyson drove through the villages and looked at the options that had been offered to them. "This house has been empty for a long time," the specialist told them. "I like it," said Alyson. She walked inside. looked outside. Everything she wanted, bathhouse, vegetable garden, outbuildings, will take it. It took you so long to decide on an apartment, and you bought the house on the click. Was surprised by the young man who offered them all this. I guess I just wanted it more than a concrete box, Alyson admitted. If everything is perfect, we can do the paperwork, the realtor said. We're in, the couple said in unison. Alyson took a vacation at work, wanted to do everything quickly, to move in now. The first thing the woman did was to get acquainted with the neighbors. She went first to one, then to another. A week later, a housewarming party was celebrated in their yard. Of course, the house was not ready to move in yet, but she wanted to make people happy. I think you'll be fine here, said Selena, who was Logan's wife. We hope so, Alyson was sure. First, Steve put up the walls, then the roof. The neighbors helped when they had time. And today it was down to the cesspool, and there it was. Alyson couldn't get away from what she saw. She looked at her husband with big eyes. Should we open it up? He asked. Do you think the genie will come out of there? Logan teased him. Yeah, bad idea. The man shook his head. He finished his work for the day, putting the wooden box back in place. Threw a tarp over what they found so as not to scare anyone. We should go see the old-timers, see if they know anything, Alyson suggested tonight. Tomorrow, I think everyone will know about this case and someone will find it, Steve said. They went to bed, but neither could sleep, both of them thinking about the terrible discovery. What else have you thought of? The man asked his wife. He wanted to get away from the sorrowful thoughts. We should bury it, said Alyson. Yes, but first to find out what was going on, he realized. As Steve had anticipated, the next day everyone knew what he had found in the cesspool. But whoever Alyson asked about the former tenants, they just said, no, I don't know. I know there was a big family that lived here, said Selena, the neighbor. She and Logan, like Steve and Alyson, had just moved in. The police should be called, Logan was sure. Yeah, they'd definitely look into it, Steve agreed. He didn't wait for other advice, dialed the number and called the police. The police arrived, and they were told everything, in some places even interjecting. You didn't open it? The officer asked. Of course not, Alyson's eyes bulged. The coffin had been removed, taken away for identification and other matters. Alyson had seen it all. She had asked her husband to go into town for a few days to get away from the horror she had experienced the day before. Okay. As usual, he gave a positive answer. They drove to Alyson's apartment, talking the whole way about how it could have been someone's son or husband. The only thing that was unclear was how he ended up where Steve had found him. I'll tell you what, we'll probably live here until things clear up, he said to his wife, who didn't mind. Are you going to go there? Alyson asked him. Yes, I'll go tomorrow and see if I can find someone else, he said, while he was thinking about something. Good, then I'll get on with work and other things. Alyson didn't even want to think about it. Steve, as promised in the morning, got ready and went to the place where they had already settled down. He went straight to Logan's house. They first sat him down at the table to have breakfast. How is it here? Is it quiet? Asked the guest to the host. Nothing, said the friend. Interesting. Steve pressed his lips together. You know, I was thinking there are still people here. They live there, far beyond the village. They say there are old people. Maybe you can ask around. Logan suggested him. Great idea. I didn't even know where to start. Steve got up and went to the door. If you need help, just whistle, Logan told him in his back. As always, Steve looked around and walked out of the house. He circled the country roads for a long time, couldn't find anyone. But when he saw the houses in the distance, he got excited. And when he drove up, he realized he'd done it prematurely. Almost all of them were shriveled and leaning, as if no one had been here for years. Hey, what are you looking for? He saw a little grandmother. Hello, I wanted to know something about the village. He pointed in the direction. What's interesting there? She was mumbling. We recently moved in. We were renovating and then we found something. I'd like to know about the people who lived there before us. Steve talked on and on. Let's go. She beckoned him into the yard beyond the gate. Thank you. He followed the old woman. They entered the gates, which were shriveled from time. Steve looked around. It was obvious that nothing had been done here for a long time. There were huge, unsawed logs all over the yard. Maybe you need some firewood. The man asked the old woman. If you want to, so stay, she said indifferently. And the man took the cleaver. He took off his jacket and got to work. When there was enough firewood, in Steve's opinion, he finished and went into the house, where the grandmother had long since disappeared. That's enough for now, he sat down on a chair. Who's going to wash your hands? She told him sternly. Well, where? He looked. There was no wash basin anywhere. There, behind the stove, she pointed to the curtain. The man got up, washed his face, and went back to his seat. Grandmother moved very nimbly about her kitchen. She put milk and bread on the table and pulled a cast iron with potatoes from the stove. Thank you. He couldn't wait to start eating. What's your name? A woman came to the bench and sat down. Steve, he said in an open and friendly way. And I'm Georgia. Grandma took a spoon. Thank you and pleasant. He started to eat too. After work, it was straightforward to feel hungry. So what did you want to know there? Georgia asked. You probably don't know. We stopped by a house that had been empty for a long time, and there were these. The man stopped talking. You mean them? She asked. I don't even know. He looked at her surprised. Don't look. I used to live in that village too. I was their neighbor. She stood up, went to the sideboard and pulled out the photos. What are these? He took the pictures she held out to him. This is the family you're talking about. She pointed her finger at Card. I don't know. I didn't notice Steve's house at first. There were 3 people standing in the photo, husband and wife, and Grandma Georgia, of course, she was younger then. And then the man saw that they were standing near the very house where he and Allison now lived. Did you get a good look at it? Grandma smiled. Yes, this is the house where we live now, or rather, we are going to. He put the picture on the table. Oh, those people had a hard fate. Who would have thought it when 2 young and healthy people came to the village? She shook her head. Do you know their story? Vanya was very interested in it. How not to know? They were like children to me, the old woman marveled. Will you tell me? He fixed his eyes on her. It's a long and sad story. It seemed that Georgia was about to cry. Of course, I have to go to town to see my wife, but I want to get to the bottom of it, he assured her. So be it. I'll tell you what happened to them. She got up, washed her hands, wiped the corners of her mouth with the handkerchief. Then she came again and sat down on the bench, put her feet up so she was comfortable, and looked at Steve. The village was prosperous then. We had everything. We worked, lived, enjoyed every day. The only thing was that the collective farm was short of hands. We wanted young people to come. But the young people at that time did not care about the village. They tried to manage somehow on their own. And then, what a joy! 2 young men arrived at once, Trevor and Katie. He's an agronomist and she's a medic. We welcomed them like honored guests. They were given a cottage, the same one you live in now. The boys were unmarried, so for about 2 years we talked them into getting married. Finally, they did, and Trevor proposed to Katie. Oh, how fun it was then. The whole village went out, beer, kvass, wine, flowed by the river. And the snacks were unprecedented. The old lady was silent, probably imagining how they had partied. And what happened then? To be honest, Steve was not very interested in the biography of young people. He wanted to get to the heart of the matter, but he was afraid to tell the woman about his find in case she got sick. I was their neighbor at that time. Every day they came to visit me. Then we had tea. Then with Katie made cakes for Trevor. They were soulful people. She stood up and walked over to the table to pour herself some tea. Why were they? Are they gone now? Steve asked. I don't know about that. She sipped her tea. After what happened to them, they didn't live long, and then they left, and I never saw them again. Grandma brushed away an invisible tear with her handkerchief. What happened to them? I wanted to find out quickly and go home. It's bad. The old lady shook her head. Kathy, are you sure you want to live in the village? You're so young. A young man asked her. If they sent me from the institute, then I have to go, she assured him. Well, Trevor and Katie met when they were students. She was in medical school and he was in agricultural school. They graduated, and when Trevor found out that Katie was sent to work in the countryside, he asked to go there himself. But now, when the time came, he regretted his choice. No, he still loved Kathy, but he didn't want to live in the village all his life. Why don't we work for a few years and then leave? He asked her. Well, after a few years we'll see, she told him. As soon as the chairman learned that two young people were coming to him, he immediately allocated them a house. The girl and the young man quickly settled there, whitewashed the walls and painted the floors. They were sociable, so everyone in the village knew and loved them. Aunt Georgia, Katie called her neighbor. "What do you want?" She turned around. "Come and visit me. I baked a pie," she called her. She was happy to come, and they sat at the table, chatting and drinking tea. At some point, the whole village began to persuade them to get married, but Kathy said that she was still young and it was too early. And after 6 months, the girl felt that she was not alone. She told her husband about it. There was nowhere to go. The wedding was going to take place anyway. Ogully Valley heard to the glory and began a simple life of two people who lived together. Oh, kicking. Katie sat on the couch. Then her husband would lie on her belly and listen. "It's like there's not just one baby in there, but a whole team," he would say as he felt kicks through her belly. "You know, I feel like there's more than one baby in there too," Katie confirmed his words. "What did the doctor say?" he asked her. "Who says what?" she said. It wasn't very complicated. Katie was pregnant, and when she had to give birth, she had invited her Aunt Georgia and another one, who was a medic. She went to the nurse's station where she worked. "Why are you here?" Georgia asked her when she got there. "I don't want to go to town. It's far away and no one close to you will come to you," the girl said. "Okay, as you know, we'll deliver the baby. We've done it more than once," the woman assured her. "Okay, I'll give you a hint if anything." Katie was so small and her belly was climbing up to her forehead. When it started, the women scooted in. Katie breathed. She knew how to do it right. "Push," shouted Georgia, and the girl started. Time passed very slowly. The pain was unbearable. Finally, the head came out, and then the rest of the body. There, a woman lifted the baby in her arms, a boy. The second woman took it from Georgia. Katie had no time to rejoice, but the pain came again. "What's that?" The neighbor was frightened. The second one, Katie exhaled. Oh my God, it was starting again. After a few minutes and the second little boy was in the woman's arms. "You knew? Why didn't you tell me?" Georgia threatened with her finger. "It's okay," was the exhausted girl. The babies were bathed and placed next to their mother. "What are you going to name them?" The one who had just delivered the babies was delighted. "Anthony and Donald." Katie lay back and looked at her babies. Anthony was mobile. He was roaring and active. Donald, on the other hand, lay motionless. "What's wrong with him?" Kathy asked. "That's for you to tell me." Georgia shook her head. She wanted to get up, but Katie couldn't do it. When it all came out, it turned out that the boy had been born disabled. He was just like his brother, except that he developed differently. Katie cried a lot. Trevor supported her in everything. But there was nothing to do. She would never leave the baby. From the day they were home, all her time was devoted to Donald. Of course, Anthony wasn't without his mother's love either, but he could do a lot on his own. "You take such good care of them," Trevor often said. "They're my little blood." The mother held her sons in her arms. "Let me help." Her husband never said no when his help was needed. Kathy would give Anthony to her husband, and she would sit with Donald. The boys were growing up. Anthony was already walking, and Donald was still sitting on his mother's lap. She went to hospitals, went to witch doctors, took the child to the witch doctor, all to no avail. "I'm going to work, hang in there." The husband kissed his wife and left. It was hard, but Katie coped with everything. Georgia helped her. When it was necessary to go to work, the girl could not. She wrote a letter of resignation. She had a disabled son in her arms. It was sad. People started coming to her house for her to see them and treat them if needed. "Anthony, stop it," yelled the mother to her son as he molested his brother. "Why him?" the boy pouted. Often the boy had to stand in the corner for hurting his brother. Katie worked with her son. She gave him massages and medication. By the time it was time to go to kindergarten, Donald could already move a little independently. The mother rejoiced at her son's first successes. She did not give up, took him to doctors, practiced herself. "Anthony, get ready for kindergarten," his mother told him. She had already dressed Donald and was waiting for her second son. "Why do you always dress him and not me?" The boy took offense. "Let me help you." She put Donald in the stroller and went over to her son. After that, they would go to the garden. Donald would babble something in the stroller. After one son went to the garden, Kathy felt better. She had more time at home. She did the laundry, ironed, took care of Donald, did the housework. Everyone who knew her in the village often came and helped her, some with clothes, food, some even gave her money. Katie refused, but they shoved her down. "How was your day today?" Trevor would ask in the evening. He came when the whole family was already gathered. It was fine. The girl would get up and kiss her husband. By the time the boys reached school age, the mother decided to put Donald in the first grade. He could walk. His head was working properly. She invested so much effort in the boy that she hoped for understanding of the leadership of the educational institution. "Let's see how he will behave, how other children will accept him," did not refuse her. Trevor, Donald got into the first grade. She rejoiced in the evening. "Are you sure he'll do well?" Her husband doubted. "In knowledge, I have pulled him up. He is not inferior to ordinary children." She was surprised at Trevor's distrust. Anthony and Donald walked to their first call on their own feet. Katie was only a little supportive of her son. How worried she had been when they first left for lessons. All day long she sat wondering how her boys were doing. Had they fought? Had they had a fight? "Mom," Anthony came running into the house. "Where's Donald?" She looked behind him. "He'll be here in a minute. He's a cripple," laughed his brother. "What are you talking about? And where did you hear that word?" Mom was angry. If the parents needed to go somewhere or to work in the garden, they left the boys with Georgia, who didn't mind. "Who's going to school?" A neighbor came in the evening. "We did," the boys shouted with glee. They all sat down together at the table and ate the delicious pie the woman brought. "Thank you, you always help us out," Katie told her. And the woman saw how hard it was for her. She hadn't started a family herself, and now it was too late. Georgia loved Kathy like a daughter, and her children were her grandchildren. Trevor worked, the children grew up, and now it seemed that the family was restored. By winter, Kathy decided to go out to work. The residents rejoiced because they had never found anyone. There was one doctor who came from out of town, but he only lasted 6 months. "If you need anything, you ask for it right away. Don't be shy," the neighbor told her. "It's a must," the girl thanked her. Trevor often came to the neighbor's house after work. She'd buy him tea, and he'd cry on her shoulder. "What is it this time?" The woman sat down at the table, on which there were candies and gingerbread. "Nothing." "Katie is pitiful." He took a sip of tea. "What's there to feel sorry for? Look how well she did. She got the boy back on his feet." Georgia understood him, but she shouldn't be like him. "I can't stand to see her doing all this. And then she comes into the bedroom and drops dead," Trevor said. She'd come up to him and stroke his head. It was often like that. Katie knew Trevor went there, but she didn't say anything because she knew he was tired too. The man worked 2 jobs to make money for the family. "Kathy, why don't we go to the seaside and have a vacation?" he suggested it one day. "Now the boys are on vacation, we'll definitely go." She knew it would be very good for Donald. And as soon as the boys finished first grade, they bought train tickets. "Mom, it's so nice here," sat Donald on the sand. "Yes, son." She looked up and saw Trevor and Anthony splashing in the water. Here, the couple had a chance to spend some quality time together. "Did you get some rest?" Trevor asked her when they had gone to bed. "Yes, thank you, sweetheart." She kissed his shoulder. Everyone went home in a positive mood. There was a great mood. Nobody forgot about the neighbor. They brought her some shells and beautiful stones from the sea. "Well, how?" She was already waiting for them at the gate of their house. "Fine," smiled the family. Anthony was pestering his brother again. "Calm down," the mother threatened them with her finger. Within a day, she was already out at work. Georgia was with the boys now. A month passed. Kathy sat in her office. Grandpa Frank came in to see her. "What's troubling you?" She got up from her chair. Abruptly dizzy, Kathy fainted. "Daughter, what's wrong with you?" Bent over her grandfather bent over her. She opened her eyes and smiled. Grandpa Frank gave her the same smile. "I guess I'll be going." He got to his feet and walked toward the exit. Katie didn't stick around either. She was in a hurry to get home. "What are you doing here?" Georgia was surprised that she had come so early. "I think we're going to have another family member soon," Kathy said excitedly. "Oh, really?" the neighbor said excitedly. They sat down at the table, poured tea, and waited for Trevor to come home from work. When he came, the women told him everything. It was very happy news. By the end of the summer, it was clear that Katie was not wrong. She was really expecting a child. "It's a girl," Georgia told her. "How do you know?" Katie turned to her. "Look, what a lifeline," laughed the neighbor. Kathy was feeling bad now. She was nauseous all the time. It was hard to go to work, but she kept going. Her fellow villagers felt sorry for her again. During her pregnancy, the girl had lost a lot of weight. She looked sickly. What if she was sick again? She shared her fears with her neighbor. "Do not think about it ahead of time," she advised. Trevor became more attentive to his wife. The boys realized that the mother is difficult. They tried not to bother her with their arguments, behaved quietly. Anthony and Donald were in the second grade. Now that his mother was lying at home, Donald had a hard time. He did not understand much in his studies, and the woman could not help. Trevor tried his best, but he couldn't keep up with all these tasks either. "Stop shouting, you see, Mom is not well." Sometimes he broke down into a shout. He understood that it was hard for Katie to hear and see it. The labor started suddenly. It wasn't due yet. It scared Katie even more. She woke Trevor. He quickly ran to get Georgia. Now it was just the two of them. Trevor took the boys into the other room. No one was sleeping that night. "It hurt," moaned Katie. "Oh, girl, you should go to the hospital," worried the neighbor. The child was walking forward. "We'll get through this," Katie said. Georgia had delivered babies, but she didn't have that much experience. She twirled her belly. Finally, Katie stopped her. "It's starting," she shouted so loudly that Donald in the next room flinched and clung to his brother. No one was keeping track of time, but as it began to get light outside the window, a baby's cries echoed through the house. "Well, thank God," Trevor exhaled and hugged the children. "Daughter," Georgia came out of the room. She was so tired, as if she had not delivered a baby and unloaded coal. "How are you?" The man looked into the room. "Good." His wife nodded to him. He walked over and looked at his princess and smiled. After that, Katie began to blossom. She and her daughter, who was named Fiona, took her sons to school together, started helping Donald with his studies again. Trevor saw that his wife was healthy. It was visible to the naked eye. The boys continued to study. When they were in the 5th grade, Fiona went to kindergarten, and the mother went to work. From that point on, no one worried about anyone. "How's Donald doing?" Patients who came to see Kathy would ask. "You know, the bigger he gets, the less you can see of his handicap," she answered and smiled. "That's great." They thanked and left happy locals. Kathy was happy. Fiona made her happier every day. But the boys, that's another matter. "What have you done again?" She had to deal with them tonight. "Nothing." "Why are they calling him names?" Anthony said. He always stood up for his brother so that, God forbid, he would not be beaten up or do something worse. "I understand all that, but we need to be careful." She pretended to be angry with them. "We're sorry." The brothers apologized as best they could. Katie didn't expect anything bad to happen, so she forgave and kissed her blood. When Fiona had to go to 1st grade, the boys were already in 8th grade. That's where the trouble started. Anthony got mixed up with a bad crowd, started doing all sorts of naughty things. And most importantly, he dragged his brother along with him. "What's that smell?" Mom asked me at night. "Mom, we're adults," Anthony told her. She could see that Donald was not feeling well. He was standing and swaying. "Son, what's the matter with you?" Kathy was frightened. "I need to lie down," the man said. And then all night long the woman didn't sleep. Not only did she have to help her daughter do her homework, she had to run after her sons. And in the morning she had to go to work. "Trevor, talk to them," she begged her husband. "I can only whip them." He clenched his fists. "Why go to extremes?" Katie didn't understand. "You and your good nature will only make things worse," he told his wife. "I'm asking for your help." Kathy began to cry. "All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow," he promised. Katie hoped so. And then something happened that made her mother feel so bad that she had to go to the hospital. The boys were 15 years old, and that night they were out for a long time. At first, the parents were not worried. Their sons could sometimes stay out late. But when it was 2 in the morning, the mother and father were not on a joke frightened. Katie went outside. She went and knocked on George's door. She, though asleep, got got dressed and went outside. "Shall we walk around the village?" the woman asked her. "Shall we split up?" the neighbor suggested it. "No, together first," Katie disagreed. They walked on, knocking on every house with a light on, but there were no boys anywhere. They reached the end of the village where the quarry was. They saw a fire burning in the distance. "That way," Katie said. They rushed toward where the light was flickering. Donald was lying by the fire, dead drunk. "Son," Kathy began to cry. That's all he could say. "Can you get up?" She tried to get him up, but she couldn't do it. Katie looked at Georgia, who came over, and together they managed to get the boy to his feet. A hand on his shoulder, Katie showed her neighbor. They were weaving some, because the guy, who was completely relaxed, was hanging on to them. Presently, they put Donald on a bench a few houses away. She ran, went inside. "Trevor," she called to her husband in a whisper. What they found him. He also spoke, because the daughter was already asleep. "Help, please. He's sitting on the bench, Georgia, and I just can't carry him already. It's very heavy," she whispered to him, and she was very nervous. "Okay, wait. Just don't worry." He put something on his feet and ran out of the house. Trevor easily threw the guy on his shoulder and carried him to the house. Put him on the couch. He's drunk." He turned away from his son. "That's right. And where's Anthony?" The mother sat down next to Donald and cried. "Why are you crying? They have their own head on their shoulders." Trevor was getting nervous. "I know they have a head on their shoulders, but how old are they?" Katie continued to cry. "If he's not back by morning, we'll report him," the man said unequivocally. By morning, when Donald woke up, the first thing he did was ask for water. "Where's Anthony?" Kathy bent over him. Anthony remembered what had happened yesterday. Anthony, your brother." His mom was standing next to him. "Listen, yesterday we met the townspeople. They came to visit us in the village and asked us to take them somewhere where they could make a fire. So we took them to the quarry, and they took bottles out of a bag and started serving them." "I don't remember, but I think Anthony went off with them," Donald said. "What are you talking about?" Kathy ran around the room. She didn't know what to do. What townies? Where did they go? How many of them were there? She began to gather herself. "Where are you going?" Trevor came out to her. "To the precinct," she said. "We need to do something." Anthony had left with the townspeople. She was already outside the gate when she saw her son. He was walking. His pants and shirt were torn. His face was bruised. "My God, my son, where have you been? What happened to you?" She ran up to him. "Ma, I need to lie down," he told her practically in syllables. She took him inside and put him on the couch. "Is Donald here?" That's all he asked. Here, how did you get here?" She screamed and cried. Fiona came into the room. She looked at the brothers and could not understand what had happened to them. A few days later, a private man came to their house. Trevor himself was very surprised at his visit. He let the man into the kitchen and they sat down at the table. "Is Anthony home?" the man in the uniform asked then. "Yes, I'll get him right away." He entered the room. After that, the policeman told everything. "A few days ago, your son robbed the store with other boys," the policeman said. "That can't be." Katie jumped up from her stool. "All the evidence is against him," the cop insisted. "What do we do now?" The woman didn't understand. "Pay the fine and it's all over at once, or I have to take him away," the man said. "Okay, we will pay everything," exhaled the woman. She did not understand how from such a boy, which he grew up, could grow up such a bully. Anthony had gotten away with it, but he had gotten the worst of it at home from his father. "If you ever lay a hand on another man's property again, you'll know what prison is," a man told him. I get it. The boy didn't look at his father. "You know he can't drink. Why don't you keep an eye on it?" Katie wondered. "Mom, I got it." You could see that the guy was hurt and offended. After that, the boys quieted down a bit. Donald spent most of his time at home and Anthony was always doing something. His mother wouldn't get out of the principal's office, but nothing else happened. After this incident, Kathy began to feel sick, dizzy all the time. No pills helped. But she wouldn't go to the hospital because she was afraid of what they'd say. "Katie, what if it gets worse?" Georgia admonished her. "Thank you for your concern, but I can manage on my own," the woman replied in the same way to everyone. She was tutoring her daughter and trying to counsel the boys. "What are we going to wear to the prom?" The boys asked their mother. Let's buy you suits, Mom suggested. Good, they cheered. Anthony wanted to go to the city after graduation and work there. Donald didn't know what he wanted to do. His mother couldn't insist, so she just gave advice. Why do you need to go to the city? What do you want there? She cried in the evenings. Everything is possible there now. Earn to live well, her son told her. And you? She turned to Donald. What about me? I'll stay with you. I'll help you. He shrugged his shoulders. What a fool. His brother laughed at him. He's a fool himself. He turned and took a swing at his brother. Katie got so tired of all the arguments that she just walked away. One day she had a seizure and was taken to the hospital. What did you get out of it? The father asked his sons. We'll apologize later, Donald said. Don't let it be too late, sighed the father and left. Katie was fine. She was on a drip, took all the pills she needed, and came home as soon as she felt better. Forgive us, Mom. Donald came up to her. She'd hugged him and stood like that for a long time. Fiona had been a quiet and calm girl all these years. She had done well at school, no complaints from her teachers. Lately, she had become interested in socializing with her brothers. What do you find so interesting with them? Her mother once asked her. I don't know, just shrugged the girl. Just don't go anywhere with them, the woman asked her. Why not? She didn't understand. Because she's too young. Her mother hugged and kissed her. She didn't have any problems with Fiona at all. She thought to herself, Anthony, just as he'd said he was going to go to the city, was going to do just that. He was getting ready. Graduation was just around the corner. Donald, on the other hand, was more at home. He was studying for his exams. Fiona, hi, her brother's friends came up to her. Hi, she looked at them. She liked them. Shall we go for a walk with us? The girls called out to her. Of course, she was sure she had nothing to be afraid of with grown-up girls. Where are your brothers? The new friends asked. As it turned out later, they specifically came to the girl to find out from her everything about Anthony and Donald, but where she was then to understand it. I don't know, out walking somewhere, the girl shrugged. Off they went. First, they were just in the village, and then they went beyond it as well. There was a forest ahead. Fiona walked up to one girl and took her hand. Scared, laughed the girl. A little, she was only 9 years old. Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine. They had already entered where the big trees grew. They usually gather at the edge of the forest, one of the girls said. They started to make their way into the deep. I want to go home. Fiona looked at the girls. No, we'll find the boys now and then we'll all go together. I'm tired. Fiona began to moan. Don't moan, one of her friends told her. They walked out into the clearing. Someone was there. Voices could be heard. Hello, everyone, came Betty, the bravest of them all. Oh, the girls are here. A strange young man turned around. And who are you? The girl looked perplexed. And I'm just who you need. He started to get up from the ground. His buddy started to do the same. Now our guys are coming here. They will show you, said Betty defiantly. And who are we? He was looming over her. The other girls stood a little further away. They didn't know what to do. Fuck you. Turned around and walked towards her friends. What? Her boyfriend grabbed her by the hair. Let go, she shouted. The girls went to her friend's rescue. Fiona saw all this. She was scared. She couldn't move. The girls shrieked and ran wherever she was going. At that moment, a terrible thing was happening in the clearing. The one who took the girl by the hair piled her on the ground and went under her skirt. When the others tried to stop him from doing it, the other one came up to them. Hey, what do you want there? He said defiantly and pushed them away. Let her go, almost crying, Catherine said. Aha, found fools. The comrade grabbed one that was closer. Ah, screamed throughout the forest the girl. Anthony and Donald at this moment appeared in the clearing, and with them another 5 friends. Who are you? What do you want? Grabbed the guy who was already lying on Betty. He quickly stood up and grabbed him by the chest. The other girl was freed too. They ran away, and a fight broke out between the guys. They fought to the death. One of the strangers pulled out a knife. Donald, his brother shouted, but it was too late. He was stabbed in the side. The boys all pounced on the assailants, and when it was over, Donald was unconscious on the ground, and the attackers had fled into the woods. Cowards, Anthony looked at them. He tried to lift his brother. but he couldn't do it. Is he breathing? The boys asked. I think so. The boy listened to his breathing and felt his brother's pulse. At this time, the girls, who were in shock, ran to the village. They didn't know where Fiona was, so they wanted to check if she was home or not. When they were already at the gate, they didn't dare to knock or enter. What if she's not there? Catherine looked with frightened eyes. Why did we drag her there in the first place? Began to repent Betty. At this moment from the conversation heard Katie. She came out of the house. What happened to you girls? She could see that everyone was scared. Aunt Kathy, forgive us. The girls began to cry. What are you saying? The woman felt her head start to hurt. Fiona, Catherine stopped talking. What Fiona? Where is she? Her hands began to shake and twitch. We do not know. We thought she ran home, sobbed the girl. Jesus came back into the house, threw on a scarf and put on Katie's shoes. What happened? Trevor came out to her. Fiona is missing, began to cry woman. Quick, we need to look for her. He got ready too. All together, including Georgia, they rushed towards the woods. They didn't go a few meters when they saw Anthony and company. They were carrying someone in their arms. Donald. His mother fell to her knees in front of him. Mom, those scumbags stabbed him, Anthony said quickly. What's going on? She looked up at her son. He needs to go to the hospital, said someone from behind. Quick, to the nurse's station, the mother commanded. The boys dragged him there. Katie turned his sweater back, looked. The wound wasn't big, but it was serious. She did as she had been taught. Donald was in serious condition, needed to go to the hospital. An ambulance was called. They needed to look for Fiona. She was in the same woods as the bandits. Will you stay with him? The mother asked her son. No, let's go with us. The friend suggested. The guys would be more useful in the forest. Okay, the group headed back to the place they had just returned from. Fiona was nowhere to be found. No matter how much her mother and the boys shouted, no one answered them. Oh my God, where is my daughter? Crouched down on her knees and began to sob Katie. Her head was hurting worse and worse. It felt like it was about to split in two. Mom, go home. We're on our own here. Anthony pleaded with her. You've already done everything yourself. She couldn't calm down. The search continued into the night, but there were no results. We need to go home, eat and change, Trevor said calmly. How can you say that when your daughter is missing? She screamed. Good, then we need to get a bigger group together, he understood. And just like his wife, he wanted to cry. Fiona, screamed the mother at the top of her voice. But again there was silence in response. Katie, calm down, she's probably really scared and hiding. Her husband took her by the shoulder. Leave me alone, everyone, the mother shouted again. Her husband lifted her up and carried her home. She grimaced and scratched, but he tolerated it. The boys gathered more people and went to comb the woods. When Katie had taken a sedative, she went to the nurse's station, but there was no one there. Donald had been taken away in an ambulance. Trevor, please let's go to the woods. She sat on the couch and cried. Now when the guys come back, we'll replace them. He showed her there were still a few people waiting outside. Okay, put her head down in her arms, his wife. Time passed and Fiona was still nowhere to be found. Morning came. Everyone was exhausted, but there was nothing they could do. Let's go. Trevor took his wife's hand. They searched every corner of the forest, but the girl was nowhere to be found. What did we do? Was she dead? Katie asked. Horrible images came to mind, but the woman didn't want to think about it. It couldn't be. Her husband cradled her in his arms. The search continued. The boys were screaming, looking under bushes and trees. Trevor dragged his wife home again. She felt sick. She was passing out. She needed to rest. What about you? She looked at her husband. And me back. He pointed to the woods. Good. She collapsed exhaustedly onto the bed. Katie lay staring at the ceiling. She couldn't imagine what would happen to her if her daughter was gone. What if those scumbags caught her and abused her? She covered her eyes with her hands again and started crying hard. Don't, approached her Georgia, who had just entered the house. No, she screamed. There the girls came, who were taking Donald to the hospital. The woman tried to speak softly so as not to make things worse. Where is he? What's wrong with him? She jumped out of bed. He's in the hospital. His organs have been hit. Her neighbor took her hand. I have to be with him. She snuggled into Georgia's shoulder and sobbed. Yes, of course, we'll find Fiona and go, she told her. Will we find her? Katie didn't believe it anymore. We will, the woman was sure of it. They packed up and went into the woods. Georgia had packed a large bag of provisions to feed those who were in the woods. No. Katie approached her husband. Woman, to the operating room. Take the girl for a checkup, the doctor said. Trevor and Anthony stayed in the hallway. Anthony was in the intensive care unit. There was no way to get to him, so they just had to wait. Your girl is all right, a little dehydration, but it is not terrible, the doctor brought her. What about your wife? Trevor wanted to know. It's more complicated, suspected stroke. He was not in the operating room, so he didn't know exactly. We'll wait, the man said. Maybe Fiona and I can go home, the guy asked. Okay, the father replied sadly. How much time passed? No one knew. Finally, a doctor came out of the door of the operating room. Tell me, what's wrong with my wife? Trevor ran up to him. Stroke. He lowered his eyes. The operation was successful, but the results will be later. Trevor sat down on the couch again. He saw his wife being taken to the emergency room. Her head was bandaged. The man covered his eyes with the palms of his hands and cried. Now it was necessary to wait for her to come to her senses. It is not worth sitting here. Everyone is very tired. Go home, rest, and tomorrow, closer to the evening, be here, the nurse asked him. What if she wakes up and I'm not here? The man asked. No, she didn't confirm his fears. Then Trevor thought that there were children at home who were also unwell, packed up and drove there. He was very nervous. He had to hold on. As if someone had jinxed you, Georgia told him, who had already fed Fiona and put her to bed. Don't say that, Trevor agreed, even though he didn't believe it. They sat in the kitchen and were silent, for there was nothing to say. I'm going to town, Anthony said. Why? His father didn't understand. I'm fine, Donald squeezed himself out. Mom's awake, she's fine, he told his brother. He just nodded back. Anthony stood still and went to the dormitory where he lived. On the way, he wondered why all this was happening to them, but he couldn't think of anything to say. Where do you disappear all day long? His friend asked him. My brother and mom are in the hospital here, he answered truthfully. I see, you are good that you do not leave them, praised his neighbor. After that, nothing was usual. Anthony went to the hospital every day. He helped his mother to get up. They took a little walk. Then he would go to his mother. She needed to be fed. He took care of her as best he could. Sometimes his father and Fiona came. They too did everything they could to get their relatives healed and home soon. Finally, the doctor said they could both be taken away. Only Donald mustn't do anything heavy and Kathy mustn't worry or it would be worse than it is now. Kathy, Trevor, Donald and Fiona drove back to the village and Anthony stayed behind to study. Nothing could be done. Her husband sat down next to her. All right, we must, so we must, she said and stood up. Donald was getting very upset about this. No, not because his brother was going into the army, but because they wouldn't take him there. Why, yes, he's a little sick, but he went to school with everyone else, did everything together, and now, like going to war, so Anthony did and he didn't. The day came when they had to gather their friends. The weather was beautiful outside, so they decided to gather outside. Tables were set out, which Georgia along with Katie set up. The guys came over, each wishing something for their friend. That's it, enough with the admonishment. Anthony was tired of it. He had just recently met a girl. He wanted so much to confess his feelings, but he kept silent, thinking that he would come back, then everything would start to spin. Son, right? His mother told him. Of course, he promised. The parties lasted till the night. The friends did not want to leave. The girls were crying. Trevor watched it all from the gate. He didn't realize how time had passed so quickly. Not long ago, his children had been little. They didn't bring any trouble. Katie was normal. And now, one son is leaving to serve. His wife is not well with her head. What is this, old age? Dad, what are you standing there for? Anthony called out to him. I'm coming. He broke away from the pole and sat down with everyone at the table. It's late, boys. It's getting late. We should split up. His mother saw that Donald wasn't himself again. Tomorrow, I'll wait for everyone at the station, shouted Anthony. At night, the boy couldn't sleep. He heard that it was scary where he was going. Different thoughts came into his head. Son, wake up. His mom woke him up in the morning. Yeah, now. He opened his eyes. Katie was preparing his bag for the road. Trevor was supervising the process. Anthony washed up, dressed, and ready to go to the station. Hey, the girls were already there. Friends were pulling up. Anthony climbed into the cabin. One of the guys went with him to walk him straight to the station. And you and me, the girls got into the seats too. Goodbye. Take care of yourself. Hug your son, mother. Good luck. Shook his father's hand. He held back tears. Goodbye, everyone. Do not remember and write. For the last time, waved the guy from the bus window. They drove on. Everyone was silent. The guy looked out the window as if he wanted to memorize how beautiful it was here. Tears stood in his eyes, but it could not be shown to anyone. The son left. The mother sat at home at the table. She did not understand how she would survive parting with him. Shall we go to George's? Her husband came up to her. Let's go, she stood up. The neighbor was always happy to see them. She set the table as she usually did, and they sat down to talk. How's your health? The woman asked Katie. I'm fine, Kathy shrugged. But her husband and Georgia noticed that she was starting to act a little differently. Good. They didn't bring it up again. After a brief sit-down, the husband and wife went home. Kathy sat back in her seat at the table. For some reason lately, it was the one she had been occupying, and she could sit there for hours. Where are Donald and Fiona? She turned to her husband. I don't know, out somewhere, Trevor shrugged. I'm worried about her. Why is she always walking with him? The woman spoke her concerns. On the other hand, it's a good thing. Trevor tried to reassure her. They heard some rumbling outside the window. What's that? Katie looked out. I don't know. Can't you see it? Her husband asked her. Not yet. The woman remembered what Donald had told her about the motorcycle. She got up from her seat. Let's go. Trevor took her hand. They went outside the gate just as Donald pulled up there on his motorcycle, Fiona sitting behind. Did you buy it after all? The man was examining the iron horse. Yes, I can ride it around the village now, the boy said proudly. Oh, son, be careful. His mother came up to him. It's all right, he hugged her. Where are you going? She looked at her daughter. Mom, why can't I go? Fiona resented not being allowed to socialize with her brother. Okay, just please be careful, she kissed the girl. The motorcycle started again and the young people sped off into the distance. What do you think? She looked up at her husband. I don't know, he shrugged. Time passed. Anthony wrote letters. His father, when he received them at the post office, read them to his wife first. He was just afraid that his son would write something exciting and Kathy would immediately feel bad. Look, another letter. He came home. The woman smiled. She waited every day to hear from her son. Her husband would read it aloud, omitting some details, and then they would write a reply together. One day that dreaded letter arrived. Anthony wrote that he was going to a hot spot. His father didn't understand why he had made that decision, but there was nothing he could do. Naturally, he didn't say anything to Kathy. He himself first wrote a reply with his wife, and then from himself. I'll go to the post office and mail it. He showed her the envelope. Good, she nodded and smiled. Trevor decided not to tell Donald about his brother either, so he wouldn't blab. On the way back, he stopped by George's. Hey, why are you alone? She wondered. Needing to talk, he sat down at the table. Okay, what's up? She sat down too. Anthony texted, says he's going to a hot spot. The woman was the only person he told about it. Oh, really? She put her hand over her mouth. I don't understand it myself. Kathy didn't say anything, and you don't say anything. He pressed a finger to his lips. Of course, she nodded. They sat for a while longer, discussed the latest news, and Trevor went home. Father, Anthony's friends are calling us to go for a ride, Donald shouted from a distance. Are you sure you can handle it? Dad got worried. Surely you've seen me ride? Just Ace? He cocked his head. Fiona, why don't you stay home? The man insisted. No, it'll be so interesting. She took a firmer hold of her brother. Okay, just don't tell Mom later, Trevor whispered. The boys left, and he went into the house. Who were you talking to? Katie was sitting in her seat. Let's go to bed, he called his wife. It's so early, she looked at her watch. It's okay. He took her hand and led her to the bedroom. They lay down, talked for a long time, and soon fell asleep. Donald and Fiona met the boys at the edge of the village. Only 4 of them had motorcycles. They were going to go to the track and compete. Who's first? One of the boys asked. Me. Donald raised his hand. Good, then I'll go with you, the friends chimed in. Dibs on me, Fiona asked her brother. No, it's gonna be really fast, he told her off. The boys got off the gas and started off, running parallel to each other. Donald won because he was really going fast. Oh, you're good, said the one he was competing with and shook his hand. I can't, Donald shook his rival's hand. Then one pair and the other took turns riding. Each time someone won, and then the winners competed. There were only 2 left, the ones who rode the fastest. Donald was one of them. Cheer, he shouted to his friends. Everyone hooted, and the boys got on their horses and rode into the wind. Donald, you did well, one of the girls ran up to him. Fiona stood aside, resentful of her brother. Bringing her here and not paying attention, she turned away from everyone. Sis, what's wrong? Her brother came up to her. Nothing, not even once, did not take me for a ride with the wind on the asphalt, all around the village. In the village, she did not turn around. Sit down, now I'll roll, like an honorary circle of the winner. He looked back. The friends were already parting. Really, she looked at him. Sure enough, he went to his bike, got on it. Fiona nestled in the back. She hugged her brother tightly as before. Where are you going? The other friends were surprised. I'm taking my little sister for a ride, he waved at them. He accelerated, said something to Fiona, and they sped down the asphalt. Now there were no bumps or bumps. Everything was smooth. Not a few seconds after they pulled away, a KAMAZ showed up ahead. The friends saw Donald start to wiggle. What happened to him? Perhaps startled by the big oncoming car, probably he wanted to turn around. A bang, a thud, and a scream, and then silence. Over there. After a little stupor, those who were watching all this shouted. The boys rushed in, but there was nothing they could do. Donald was lying in an unnatural pose on the road, Fiona in the other direction on the grass. The girl's still alive, shouted the KAMA's driver. He radioed for an ambulance. The ambulance had to wait for some time. Fiona was alive. She was very badly bruised, but she was breathing, unlike her brother. Trevor and Katie had long been asleep when the windows and the door began to bang. Who is it? The man woke up. He went to the door, opened it, and there was a bunch of people almost knocking him off his feet. Uncle Trevor, Donald, Fiona. They shouted at each other. Calm down, will you explain what happened? He looked up with dazed eyes. Donald had crashed. Fiona was alive. She was in hospital. At that moment, the wife appeared on the doorstep, and as soon as she heard that, she fainted. Get out, Trevor shouted at the young people. Katie, he ran to his wife. He lifted her in his arms and put her on the sofa and went to get someone to look after his wife while he was away, calling for Georgia. What again? He woke her up too. They say Donald crashed his motorcycle with Fiona, he said quietly. What? The neighbor's eyes bulged. I don't know what's wrong with them, but Katie heard it all, and she's not feeling well now. He rushed her. When Georgia left for Trevor and Katie's house, Trevor ran to the village hall to make a call. The ambulance didn't arrive quickly. Katie never recovered. She was taken away. Trevor went with her. At the hospital, he reliably learned that his son was no longer alive and his daughter was in intensive care, in extremely serious condition. He had not been told anything about his wife yet. Trevor was sitting in the corridor. He was crying. The doctor came and sat down next to him. I think your wife has gotten worse, but she's holding on. Maybe she doesn't believe it yet, he said. Yeah, Trevor shook his head. You can pick her up tomorrow morning. Here are the pills. Give them to her at the funeral. The doctor handed Trevor a packet. Thank you. He didn't know what else to say. I hope everything will be okay. The medic got up and walked down the hall. Trevor slept right there in the hallway on the couch. In the morning, he walked in on Katie. She was looking at him with eyes that were so scary. Where's Donald? She asked him in the voice she used to speak to him before his illness. In the morgue, her husband didn't lie. Why him? She cried. Trevor unsealed the packet and gave it to his wife. She obediently drank the pill. And Fiona? She couldn't hold back the tears. She's in the hospital. She's doing fine. Her husband lied. They spent some more time in the hospital and then took their son's body and drove to the village. After the pills the doctor had given Trevor, Katie was generally immobile. She was doing something, but she was like a doll. No emotion, nothing at all. The funeral was quiet. The mother sat by her son's coffin and cried. Everyone felt sorry for her. Georgia didn't understand how she hadn't gone mad herself. This had happened. "We need to go to the hospital," to Fiona, Trevor said to the neighbor when everything settled down. "Yeah, you go and I'll stay with Katie," she told him. Trevor did his best, but Fiona had outlived her brother by only 8 days. He sat and cried and didn't know what to do. Then the man made a strong-willed decision. He took his daughter's body, arranged for cremation, paid the money. He drove to the village with a small vessel containing Fiona's ashes. It he had dug up for his son in the cemetery. "Back already?" Georgia asked him. "Yes, I have good news for you," said the man, making a happy face. "And what's that?" Kathy, when she wasn't taking pills, was adequate. "Fiona has been taken to the clinic to recover there," he smiled. "That's good. Let the girl get better," Katie said. "Do they send children without their parents?" Georgia questioned. "She's not a child. She's 12 years old." Trevor put his finger to her lips to keep her quiet. "Then I see," nodded the neighbor. She didn't know the truth yet. They all sat together. The father's heart was breaking with grief, and he couldn't even speak. In the evening, when he went to see the neighbor off, he told her everything. She looked at him with big eyes. "Trevor, where have you been?" Katie looked at him. She wasn't the same. "Out in the yard," he told her. And a month later, the thing that everyone had been dreading happened. Trevor was at work. A man came up to him. He said there was a mailman waiting for him outside. "What?" He came out. "I'm sorry." He put a telegram in his hands. His son was being taken to the motherland in a zinc coffin. "No." He fell to his knees, then got up and caught up with the man. "Please don't tell anyone. My wife will go crazy if she finds out," he begged him. "I'm not supposed to," the man replied. "What is it?" A comrade came up to him. "Nothing." He folded up the paper and put it in his pocket. Georgia, grief, he ran into her house without even knocking. "What again?" She was no longer surprised. "Anthony." Trevor couldn't get any further. "No way." She looked out the window. "Tomorrow I'll go to town for the body," he said. She supported him in everything. She said she'd do whatever he said. Trevor drove into town, arranged a car, said he needed to move building materials, wanted to make an outbuilding in the village. We agreed on a price. He came to the military enlistment office. There he was offered that the funeral would be at the expense of the state with a guard of honor, but the man refused. "You see, I have such a situation," he told them. "He wants to bury his son quietly." "Well, that's your business," the man in uniform told him. He threw a tarp over the coffin, told the driver that he had loaded everything, and they drove off. "Why at night?" The man behind the wheel didn't understand. "It just happened," Trevor shrugged. They arrived at his house. The streets were deserted, and only Georgia stood at her gate watching to make sure no one went in. 2 local backwoodsmen were prepared to help the man. They sprang out of the back alley and dragged the coffin over to the fence. Here, Georgia gave them some more. "That's it. Thanks. Go inside." He waved her off. He cleaned the toilet and shoved the coffin into the cesspool. It didn't sink, so Trevor had to dig it even deeper. By morning, he was exhausted, but he was done. The toilet was still there, nothing inside. "Yo, you smell?" Katie said when he came back to her. "I don't know." He pretended to sniff his hands. "We've got to get the bath heated." His wife got up and went into the kitchen. Trevor did as she wanted. They washed up and came back into the house. "Do you know why Anthony doesn't write for so long, and there are no letters from Fiona?" Katie asked her husband. "He'll definitely come tomorrow," Trevor said. He realized that this was his puncture. When Kathy was busy, he would sit in the other room and write. Then he'd go outside and pretend to get something out of a drawer. And then he and his wife would read together. "Oh, Trevor, what have we done? A mother should know everything about her children," Georgia told him. "I'll take her away from here," the man said. The 2 of them lived together, but Trevor started drinking because he couldn't bear it all. At some point, he couldn't take it anymore. went to the barn and hanged himself there. And in the morning, when Katie couldn't find him, she went out into the yard and the barn doors were open. She looked in and passed out. I noticed it late when she was on the ground, and I ran out and there was this picture, Georgia said. Wow, the story. Steve was sitting there looking at her. We took Katie to the hospital and buried Trevor. She herself left there to live here so there wouldn't be too many questions, she cried with tears already visible. Where is Kathy now? Steve asked her. She was in the clinic for a couple of months, and then she was transferred to a specialized center, the old lady answered. I see there was a family and then there wasn't. Steve shook his head. He looked out the window. It was getting light. He realized he'd been here all night. Okay, I'm going to go. He got up. I'm not afraid to die now. She looked at the man. Come on, you'll live a long time. He shook her hand and left. He decided to get home on foot. It would be time to think it over. He walked along the road and could not imagine how such a fate could be for people. It was impossible in his head. He reached home in the village quickly. In an hour there was a bus to the city. He wanted to take it. I went to the station, bought a ticket and went. Allison, it's me, he shouted from the doorstep. What are you doing up so early? She rolled over onto her other side. But when her husband began to tell her what he'd learned tonight, she was wide awake. She sat up in bed and blinked. What do you think? He asked her. We should call the police and give the guy a proper burial, she said. I was thinking the same thing, looked at Steve's watch. The husband and wife had been out of the house since morning. They were in a hurry to get to the station. Hello, we're here about the coffin that was found in the sinkhole, said Steve to the officer on duty. Come on in, he pointed them in the right direction. They went into the investigator's office and told him everything they knew. He sat there, his face growing more and more drawn out. Do you believe it? He asked. Well, how not to believe if all the evidence is in the face? Now it was Steve's turn to be surprised. All the documents were filled out. They agreed that the motorcade would be organized. They also agreed on the time. What now? Steve and Allison came out of the department. I want to find Kathy. The man looked at his wife. Oh, where do we start? She didn't understand. The hospital. He caught the car and they drove off. Hello, I'd like to find out any information about Kathy. He approached the front desk. Right away, the girl started poking around on the computer. Yes, here, who are you? She stared at the couple. I'm a brother, stepbrother, the man added. Okay. She told them what clinic she was in. Steve and Allison drove to the mental health clinic. They walked up to the gate. They had to fill out a bunch of paperwork to get in. They were greeted by the doctor. Steve explained to him that he had not seen his sister for a long time. She had disappeared somewhere, but now he found her. The doctor understood him, turned and showed him the direction. She always sits by the window, reading something on paper, the doctor said. Okay, thank you. They went that way, where the man directed them. Kathy was indeed sitting by the window. There were several envelopes lying on the windowsill. They were so tattered you could tell they were more than 1 year old and were constantly being opened. Kathy, the man called out to her gently. Are you for me? She turned around, looking indifferent. Yes, you, he nodded. What did you want? She stood up and walked over to them. Tomorrow your son will be buried in the village. Will you come with us? He asked her. My son is alive here. He writes letters to me every week, she showed to the strangers. So you don't want to? Stiva realized that it was all useless. No, she shook her head, went and sat back in her seat. Stiva and Allison realized there was nothing more for them to do here. They walked towards the exit. Trevor, they heard Katie's voice. What? The man turned around. Is it true? She asked Steve, even though she thought it was her husband Trevor. Yes, he nodded. Good. Pick me up from the hospital and I'll come with you. After saying that, she went somewhere down the corridor. Doctor, her son will be buried tomorrow. Can we take her? Steve asked the man. You know, I can't give such permission. Only if by our car and with nurses. He couldn't help but let the woman go to her son. Okay, even that would be fine, nodded the man. Why would you want to do that? Allison asked her husband. At least let him see for the last time that all her children were together. He himself didn't know why Stiva would do that. Fine, do as you please, she agreed. The next day, the car from the hospital and an ordinary car drove to the very village where Kathy had once lived. They headed straight for the cemetery. This way, Steve showed her. They came to the Ellison place where Kathy's son and daughter were buried, during which time the girl had also been given a memorial. Donald Finome. She sat down on the bench. Recognized it, Ellison whispered to her husband. Yes, he nodded. And after that, the honor guard lined up. A wooden cross with Anthony's picture on it was made. But the woman sat still. Only when the shots rang out did she flinch. Are you all right? The man asked her. Yes, I need to get home in case a letter arrives and I'm not there. She looked up at Steve. Okay, he looked at the nurses. They got up and put her in the car. Goodbye. The woman waved to them from the window. Goodbye. Steve stood and watched with his wife as the car drove away. Poor woman, did she think her life would turn out this way? Cried Allison. No one knows what might happen next. Steve turned to her. He saw Grandma Georgia approaching them. Hello, he shouted to her. Agassi, she walked over to the fresh grave and knelt down. Is that the neighbor? Allison guessed. Yes, he walked in her direction. Did you bring Katie in? Granny asked. I wanted her to see her children, Stiva admitted. And what, you think she was relieved? She looked up at him. I don't know, maybe. He took his wife's hand and they went to their new unfinished house. What are we going to do? Allison turned to him. Move on, they were already approaching the gate. The woman didn't want to go into the yard. And let's call a priest, he will sanctify everything here, suggested the husband. That's a good idea, Allison hugged him. So they did, and when the neighbors saw all these rituals, they decided to do the same. For a long time there was gossip in the village about the coffin Steve had found, but years later, everything is forgotten. Stiva and Ellison live happily in this house. Children come to visit them. They don't know the story that happened to them, but perhaps someday they will be told. Georgia died 6 months after all this. Stiva personally organized her funeral, and Allison helped him. May you do well there, crossed the man at the grave of Katie and Trevor's children. Let's go, Allison called out to him. They went home and thought no more about it.